The night Mira Lawson showed up at his door in tears, Adrian Vale made a choice that would haunt him for months. She stood there trembling, reaching for him with desperation in her eyes, and he said no. Not because he didn't feel it, not because he didn't want her, but because some lines, once crossed, destroy everything they touch. This is a story about two broken people who found each other in the loneliest corners of their lives, about restraint, about dignity, and about understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away. Drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Adrian Vale didn't believe in chaos anymore. At 32, he'd learned to build walls tall enough that nothing unexpected could slip through. His penthouse apartment on the 47th floor of the Meridian was a testament to that philosophy. Clean lines, muted colors, everything in its designated place. No clutter. No photographs except one. A framed picture of his son, Ethan, age 7, grinning gap-toothed at the camera during last summer's trip to the coast. The rest was silence. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows that Thursday evening, scotch in hand, watching the city lights flicker below like dying stars. His reflection stared back, dark hair starting to show hints of silver at the temples, sharp jawline, shoulders that carried the weight of a tech empire he'd built from nothing. Vale Industries had made him a billionaire by 28. The divorce had happened 2 years later, swift and brutal as a surgical cut. Sarah had taken half his fortune and all of his trust. She hadn't wanted Ethan. That still twisted something in Adrian's chest when he thought about it, which he tried not to do. Joint custody meant the boy spent weekdays with him and weekends with his mother in her new condo across town, where her boyfriend Marcus probably taught him things Adrian didn't want to know about. "Mr. Vale?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 7 o'clock is ready when you are. Give me 5 minutes, Jenny." He finished the scotch, set the glass down with precision on the marble counter, and checked his watch. Thursday meant dinner with investors, the kind of carefully orchestrated meal where nothing was said that mattered and everything was negotiated in subtext. He'd smile, shake hands, promise returns that his team would deliver because that's what they did. They delivered. Control. Predictability, safety. Adrian grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. He first saw her 3 weeks later. The Meridian housed 48 floors of luxury apartments, the kind of building where residents nodded politely in hallways and never asked questions. Adrian preferred it that way. Anonymity among the wealthy suited him fine. She was standing in the lobby when he came home from dropping Ethan at school, waiting for the elevator with grocery bags weighing down both arms. Late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. She looked tired, not the fashionable exhaustion of someone who'd stayed up late at a charity gala, but the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd stopped sleeping well months ago. "Here," Adrian said, reaching for one of her bags before he'd thought it through. She startled, pulling back slightly. "I've got it." "You're about to drop them." He nodded at the bag in her left hand where the bottom was starting to tear. "Let me help." Her eyes met his. Gray, he noticed, like storm clouds before rain, and for a moment she looked like she might refuse. Then something shifted in her expression, a kind of resignation. "Thanks." He took the damaged bag carefully, feeling the weight of canned goods and produce. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. "Which floor?" he asked as they stepped inside. 46. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "You?" 47. They rode in silence. Adrian could smell her shampoo, something floral and cheap, completely out of place in an elevator where the usual scents were expensive cologne and leather briefcases. She kept her eyes on the numbers ticking upward, her jaw tight. When the doors opened on 46, she turned to take the bag back. "I can carry it to your door," Adrian offered. "That's really not necessary." "The bag's barely holding together." She exhaled, and he caught something in that breath. Frustration, maybe. Or just the exhaustion of someone used to fighting small battles all day long. "Fine, thank you." Her apartment was 3 doors down from the elevator. She fumbled with her keys for a moment, and Adrian heard raised voices from inside. A man's voice, angry about something, and an older woman's response, equally sharp. "Here's good," she said quickly, taking the bag from him before he could set it down. "I appreciate it." "No problem." She disappeared inside without another word, the door closing firmly behind her. Adrian stood there for a moment, listening to the argument continue on the other side of the wall, then headed back to the elevator. He didn't think much about it. Not then. No. But he saw her again 2 days later. Same elevator, different clothes, same tired eyes. This time she was carrying a laptop bag and a coffee cup with a chain cafe logo, her other hand gripping her phone like she was waiting for bad news. "Morning," Adrian said. She glanced up, recognition flickering across her face. "Oh, hi." The elevator descended. Adrian checked his own phone. Emails from Jenny about the Tokyo deal. A text from Sarah asking if Ethan could stay with her next week instead of just the weekend. A reminder about his standing reservation at Mercado for lunch. "You work from home?" The question came out before he'd meant to ask it. She looked at him, surprised. "Sorry? He gestured vaguely at her laptop. "I've seen you around during the day. Most people in this building are at offices by 9. I freelance, graphic design." She said it matter-of-factly, like she'd explained it 100 times. "Flexible hours. Must be nice." Something crossed her face that might have been a smile if it had reached her eyes. "Sure. When there's work." The lobby appeared. They stepped out together, and Adrian found himself wanting to say something else, though he couldn't have explained why. "I'm Adrian, by the way." She paused, adjusting her laptop bag. "Mira." "Nice to meet you, Mira." "Yeah, you too." She walked away toward the building's coffee shop, and Adrian headed for where his driver was waiting. He climbed into the black sedan, settled into the leather seat, and forgot about her for the rest of the day. Almost. Beans. The thing about patterns is they create themselves. Adrian didn't set out to run into Mira again. But the Meridian was a building of routines, same elevator, same lobby, same morning coffee run for those who lived there. Over the next 2 weeks, he saw her maybe 6 or 7 times. Brief nods, polite good mornings that felt increasingly less awkward. She was always carrying something, groceries, portfolios, once a bouquet of cheap flowers that looked like a supermarket purchase. He noticed details without meaning to. The way she chewed her bottom lip when she was distracted, how her shoulders tensed whenever her phone rang, the fact that she never wore jewelry except a thin silver bracelet on her right wrist. One Thursday morning, he found her in the building's package room, staring at a stack of boxes with an expression that looked close to despair. "You okay?" The words came out before Adrian could stop them. Mira jumped, turning around fast. "Jesus, you scared me." "Sorry, you looked..." He gestured vaguely. "Is everything all right?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Define all right?" Adrian stepped closer, glancing at the boxes. They were addressed to someone named David Lawson. "Wrong delivery?" "No, they're for my brother. He just..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "He ordered all this stuff and had it shipped here because he's between apartments. Didn't ask, just did it." "That's inconsiderate. That's David." Mira rubbed her face with both hands. "I don't even know how I'm supposed to get these upstairs. The freight elevator's broken again." Adrian looked at the boxes, 4 of them, each marked as fragile. "I can help. You really don't have to keep rescuing me." "I'm not rescuing you. I'm offering to carry some boxes." She studied him for a moment, those gray eyes searching his face for something he couldn't name. Then she sighed. "Okay. Thank you." They took 2 trips. Adrian carried the heavier boxes while Mira managed the smaller ones, and they didn't talk much beyond coordinating the logistics. When they finally got everything inside her apartment, Adrian caught a glimpse of a cramped living room, mismatched furniture, dishes in the sink. She set down her boxes and turned to him. "I owe you coffee or something." "You don't owe me anything. I keep saying thank you and you keep helping anyway. That means I owe you." Adrian surprised himself by saying, "All right, coffee." They ended up at a cafe 2 blocks from the Meridian, a place with chipped tables and decent espresso that felt completely foreign to the world Adrian usually inhabited. His lunch meetings happened in restaurants with tablecloths and wine lists. This place had paper napkins and a barista with purple hair. Mira ordered black coffee and nothing else. Adrian got an Americano and a croissant he suspected she wanted but wouldn't buy for herself. "So," she said once they'd sat down, "you're the billionaire everyone talks about." Adrian paused mid-sip. Excuse me? In the building. People talk. You're Adrian Vale. Vale Industries. The guy who built that whole tech empire before he was 30. She said it without inflection, like she was reciting facts from a Wikipedia page. I didn't realize I was that interesting. You're not. She broke off a piece of his croissant without asking, ate it. But money makes people interesting to other people who care about money. And you don't? Mira shrugged. I care about paying rent. Beyond that, she gestured vaguely with the coffee cup. It's just numbers, right? Doesn't change who you are. Some people would disagree. Some people are idiots. Adrian found himself smiling for the first time in days. Fair point. They talked for 40 minutes. She asked him blunt questions about his work, how he'd started the company, what he actually did all day, whether he liked it. No one asked Adrian if he liked his work anymore. People assumed success meant satisfaction. Honestly, he said, some days I don't know. It used to feel like building something. Now it just feels like maintaining it. That's depressing. That's life, not my life. Mira finished her coffee, set the cup down. Mine's more like constantly trying not to drown. Graphic design that bad? Freelance anything is that bad. You hustle or you starve. Right now I'm doing both. There was no self-pity in how she said it, just statement of fact. Adrian recognized that tone. He'd used it himself years ago, when Vale Industries was 3 people in a cramped office and every day felt like survival. Why do you stay in the Meridian? He asked. If money's tight, there are cheaper places. Something shuddered in her expression. I'm not technically staying there. My brother owns the apartment. I'm just between things. Between things. Between having my own place and figuring out what the hell I'm doing with my life. She pushed back from the table. We should get back. I've got a client call at 2. They walked back to the building in silence, and Adrian wondered what he'd said wrong. But when they reached the lobby, Mira turned to him. This was nice. Thanks for the coffee. I thought you owed me coffee. I ate your croissant. We're even. She headed for the elevator, and Adrian watched her go, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. After that, the conversations became routine. Not every day, not even every week. But when they ran into each other, lobby, elevator, the package room that seemed to be Mira's particular source of frustration, they talked. Small things at first, the weather, building maintenance complaints, eventually larger things. She told him about growing up in a family that didn't quite work, how her parents had split when she was 12 and left her brother David to raise himself while she bounced between houses that never felt like home. How she'd gone to art school on loans she was still paying off, graduated into a recession, ended up doing logo designs for startups that folded before they paid her. Adrian told her about Ethan, about the divorce, about how his son asked questions like, "Why doesn't mom want to see me more?" That Adrian couldn't answer without either lying or destroying something fragile. Kids are perceptive, Mira said one afternoon. They were sitting on a bench in the building's courtyard, surrounded by carefully manicured greenery that costs more to maintain than most people's monthly rent. He probably knows more than you think. That's what I'm afraid of. What's she like? Your ex? Adrian considered the question. Ambitious, smart, good at getting what she wants. And what she wanted wasn't you. What she wanted was the money and the lifestyle. I just came with the package. He heard the bitterness in his own voice, tried to soften it. That's not fair. She loved me once, I think. Love's complicated. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Mira pulled her knees up to her chest. I've never really been in love. I've been in situations that looked like love from the outside, but she trailed off. People want things from you. Security, validation, someone to fix their problems. When you can't provide that anymore, they leave. That's cynical. That's realistic. She glanced at him. You've got a kid and an empire. What do you need from anyone? The question landed harder than she probably meant it to. Adrian thought about his empty apartment, the scotch he drank alone most nights, the way silence had become his default state. I don't know, he admitted. I used to think I had it figured out. Build the company, have a family, create something stable. Now I've got the company and half the family and no idea what stable even means anymore. Welcome to being human. Is that supposed to be comforting? No, but it's true. It just says... Weeks became months. Summer shifted into fall. Adrian noticed Mira wore the same jacket most days, noticed the shadows under her eyes deepening. She stopped mentioning client calls, started looking more exhausted, more tense. One evening in late October, he found her sitting alone in the building's lobby at 9 p.m., staring at her phone with an expression that looked close to tears. Mira? She looked up, startled, quickly wiped at her eyes. Hey, you okay? Yeah, fine, just... Her voice cracked. Long day. Adrian sat down beside her on the leather couch, keeping a respectful distance. What happened? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She laughed, but it came out broken. Client fell through. Big one. I was counting on that money for... She stopped, shook her head. Doesn't matter. It clearly matters. My brother's selling the apartment, she said suddenly. David. He's selling it and moving to Portland with his girlfriend. Gave me 30 days. The words hung in the air between them. Jesus, Adrian said quietly. Yeah. Mira stared at her phone again. I've been looking for places, but everything decent is twice what I can afford, and everything affordable is in neighborhoods where I'd need to sleep with one eye open. And I thought the client would come through, thought I'd have enough to cover first and last and deposit somewhere. But now, she stopped talking. Just sat there, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than Adrian had ever seen her. I can help, he said. No. Mira, I said no. Her voice was sharp, final. I don't take money from people. I'm not doing that. It wouldn't be like that. It's exactly like that. She stood up, grabbing her phone. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dumped this on you. I'll figure it out. She walked away before he could argue, disappearing into the elevator. Adrian sat there for a long time afterwards, staring at the empty lobby and feeling something twist in his chest that he couldn't quite name. Helplessness, maybe, or recognition. Because he'd been there too, years ago. Not with housing, but with the feeling that the world was closing in and every door you tried was locked. Money had bought him out of that particular trap, but he remembered the weight of it, the way it crushed everything else until you couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't see past tomorrow. He went upstairs and poured himself a scotch he didn't drink, standing at the windows and watching the city lights blur together. Sit. 3 days later, Mira knocked on his door. Adrian opened it to find her standing in the hallway, looking uncertain and determined all at once. I need to ask you something, she said. Okay. And I need you to say no if it's weird or crossing a line or if you don't want to. Adrian stepped back, gesturing her inside. Come in. She did, slowly, looking around at his apartment like she was cataloging details. The minimalist furniture, the single photograph of Ethan, the view that cost more than some people made in a year. You live like a monk, she said. I live simply. You live like someone who's afraid of leaving marks. She turned to face him. Can I stay here? Adrian blinked. What? Temporarily, just until I find a place. I'd pay rent. Whatever you think is fair, I'd stay out of your way. She stopped, swallowed hard. I don't have anywhere else to go. My parents aren't an option. I don't have friends with extra rooms. David's already made it clear I'm on my own, so I'm asking. The request hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them acknowledged. You don't have to pay rent, Adrian said finally. Yes, I do. Mira, if I stay here, I pay rent. Even if it's minimal, otherwise I don't stay. He understood what she was protecting, her dignity, her independence, the line that separated accepting help from becoming someone's obligation. $400 a month, he said. That's what the building charges for storage units this size. She almost smiled. I'm not a storage unit. Take it or leave it. Mira looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Then she nodded. Okay, thank you. She moved in 3 days later with everything she owned fitting into 2 suitcases and 4 boxes. Adrian had cleared out his home office, a room he barely used anyway, mostly for show when business associates visited. He'd bought a bed, a desk, basic furniture. This is too much, Mira said when she saw it. It's a bed and a desk. It's more than I expected. What did you expect? A sleeping bag on the floor? She set down one of her suitcases. Kind of, yeah. They established ground rules that first evening. She had her space, he had his. They'd coordinate kitchen usage and bathroom schedules. No overnight guests without advance notice. Respectful boundaries. It should have been awkward. It wasn't. Mira was quiet, self-contained. She worked long hours in her room, emerged for coffee in the morning and occasional dinners where they'd sit at Adrian's kitchen island and talk about everything except the strange arrangement they'd fallen into. She asked about Ethan, about Vale Industries, about whether Adrian had always wanted to build a tech empire or if it had just happened. Both, he said one night over takeout Chinese. I wanted to build something. The empire part was accidental. You don't accidentally become a billionaire. No, but you don't plan for it either. You just keep solving problems until suddenly you're too big to fail and everyone's counting on you. He stabbed at his lo mein. Then you're stuck. You could sell, retire early, do something else. Like what? I don't know. What do you actually like doing? Adrian realized he didn't have an answer. Mira started cooking sometimes. Simple meals, nothing fancy, but better than the takeout he usually survived on. She'd leave notes when she used the last of the coffee. She kept her bathroom stuff in a small bag so it didn't spread out. She tried to be invisible, but Adrian found himself noticing her anyway. The way she hummed while working, some melody he never recognized. How she always made too much coffee and left half a pot for him. The fact that she fell asleep on his couch twice while watching documentaries about design history, and both times he'd covered her with a blanket rather than wake her. It felt domestic in ways his marriage never had. Sarah had been chaos, beautiful, ambitious chaos who wanted excitement and grand gestures. Mira was quiet mornings and comfortable silences, and the understanding that you didn't have to perform for each other. This is nice, she said one evening. They were both in the living room, him working on his laptop, her sketching something in a notebook. What is? This. Not being alone. She didn't look up from her drawing. I've been alone for a long time. I forgot what it felt like to just exist around another person. Yeah, Adrian said softly. Me too. The shift happened gradually. Conversations became longer. Silences became comfortable instead of awkward. They started sharing space more naturally, working in the same room, watching movies together on nights when neither had other plans, falling into a rhythm that felt dangerous in how easy it was. Adrian knew he should be careful. He was a 32-year-old billionaire with a young son and a messy divorce in his recent past. Mira was a 30-year-old woman in a vulnerable position, living in his apartment because she had nowhere else to go. The power imbalance was obvious. The potential for damage was real. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different things. And what Adrian felt, increasingly, was that Mira understood him in ways no one else did. She saw past the money and the empire to the person underneath who was tired and lonely and trying to hold together a life that kept threatening to fall apart. She asked him hard questions about his relationship with Ethan, about what he actually wanted from the next 10 years, about whether he was happy. No one asked me that, he said one night. Asks you what? If I'm happy. Mira looked at him from across the couch. Are you? I don't know. I'm not unhappy. That's not the same thing. No, Adrian agreed. It's not. She told him about her family, the dysfunction she'd grown up swimming in, how her mother chose men over her kids, how David had learned to survive by becoming selfish, how Mira had learned to expect nothing so disappointment couldn't touch her. Except it does anyway, she said. You can't actually armor yourself against hope. It just keeps sneaking in. Is that what you're doing here? Hoping? Maybe. She pulled her knees up. Or maybe I'm just tired of fighting everything alone. Adrian understood that feeling completely. It was a Tuesday in late November when everything started to unravel. Ethan was with Sarah for the week, some custody adjustment she'd requested and Adrian hadn't fought. He came home to find Mira pacing the living room, her phone clutched in one white-knuckled hand, fury radiating off her in waves. What happened? My mother. The words came out clipped. She called asking for money. Again. Said she's in trouble with her landlord and needs $1,500 by Friday, or she's getting evicted. Are you going to give it to her? Mira laughed, harsh and bitter. With what? I barely have rent for next month, and even if I did... She threw her phone on the couch. She's lied before. called crying about emergencies that turned out to be her boyfriend's gambling debts or her own shopping addiction. I can't tell what's real anymore. What did you tell her? The truth, that I don't have it. She called me selfish, said I was just like my father, only caring about myself. Mira's voice cracked. Maybe she's right. She's not right. You don't know that. Adrian crossed the room, stood close enough that he could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. I know you're not selfish. I know you've been supporting yourself since you were barely an adult. I know you try harder than anyone I've ever met to do the right thing, even when it costs you everything. She looked up at him, and something in that look made Adrian's chest tighten. You see me, Mira whispered. You actually see me. Not what you want me to be or what you need from me. Just me. Yeah, he said. I do. They stood there inches apart, and Adrian felt the moment shift into something neither of them could take back. He should have stepped away, should have made some excuse, put distance between them, remembered all the reasons this was a terrible idea. He didn't. Mira reached up, her fingers barely brushing his jaw. Adrian! His phone rang. They both jumped back like they'd been burned. Adrian grabbed the phone, saw Sarah's name on the screen. I have to take this. Mira nodded, already retreating to her room. Yeah, of course. The phone call was about Ethan's school play next month. Sarah wanted to coordinate who would attend which performance, so they didn't have to sit together. Adrian agreed to everything she suggested, barely listening, his mind still replaying those few seconds before the phone rang. When he hung up, Mira's door was closed. They didn't talk about it. But something had changed. The comfortable silences became tense. The easy companionship felt weighted with things unsaid. Mira started spending more time in her room. Adrian threw himself into work, staying late at the office, avoiding the apartment and the questions that waited there. He knew what was happening. They were two lonely people who'd found unexpected connection, and that connection was morphing into something neither of them could afford. Adrian had responsibilities, his son, his company, his still complicated divorce proceedings. Mira was living in his apartment because she had nowhere else to go. The situation was inherently unequal, inherently dangerous, but telling himself those facts didn't stop him from looking forward to seeing her, didn't stop the conversations from going deeper, more personal, didn't stop him from noticing everything about her, how she took her coffee, the books she read, the way she bit her thumbnail when she was anxious. One evening in early December, she emerged from her room holding a portfolio. I want to show you something. Adrian set down his laptop. Okay. She opened the portfolio carefully, revealing a series of designs, logos, brand identities, website mock-ups. The work was beautiful, sophisticated, miles beyond the freelance scraps she usually talked about. This is incredible, Adrian said, meaning it. It's a pitch for a potential client. They're a startup in sustainable fashion, looking for a complete brand overhaul. Mira's fingers traced the edge of one design. I've been working on it for weeks. The meeting's tomorrow. You'll get it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. This work is exceptional. She looked at him, vulnerability written across her face. What if it's not enough? What if I'm not enough? You are. How do you know? Because I see you, Adrian wanted to say. Because you're stronger and more talented than you give yourself credit for. Because you deserve everything good. And I wish I could give it to you. Instead, he said, because anyone who looks at this work and doesn't hire you immediately is an idiot. Mira smiled, and it reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Mom. She got the job. The client called 3 days after the meeting, offering her a contract that would cover 6 months of steady work at a rate that made her voice shake when she told Adrian about it. This changes everything, she said. They were in his kitchen, celebrating with wine that cost more than her old monthly rent. I can save money, find my own place, get stable. That's great, Adrian said, and meant it despite the hollow feeling in his chest. I mean, I won't leave right away. I'll give you proper notice. Help you find someone else if you want the room rented. I don't want the room rented. Mira stopped mid-sentence. Oh. I only set it up for you. I don't need a roommate. He poured more wine, not looking at her. But you should do what's right for you. Find your own place. Build your life. What if I don't want to? The question landed soft but devastating. Adrian finally met her eyes. Mira, I'm happy here, she said quietly. Happier than I've been anywhere. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear. I know this whole situation is complicated and weird and probably crossing like 17 different boundaries. It is, but I can't pretend I don't feel it, whatever this is. She set down her wine glass. You make me feel like I matter, like I'm not just surviving, but actually living. And maybe that's just because you're kind and I'm lonely and we both needed someone, but it's not just that. Silence. Adrian, you should go to bed, he said, more harshly than he intended. It's late. Hurt flickered across her face, but she nodded. Yeah, okay. She left the kitchen, and Adrian stood there alone, gripping the counter hard enough that his knuckles went white. He was falling for her. Had probably been falling for months without admitting it, and he had no idea what to do about it. December accelerated toward the holidays. Ethan would be with Sarah for Christmas, another custody agreement Adrian had accepted because fighting felt exhausting and pointless. He'd spend the day alone, probably working, definitely not thinking about the family he'd lost. Mira was planning to visit her brother in Portland, though she didn't sound enthusiastic about it. He says I should give Mom money, she told Adrian one evening. Says it's the right thing to do, even if she's lied before. Says family is family. What do you think? I think he's never been the one she calls crying in the middle of the night. He's never been the one she guilt trips when her latest crisis needs fixing. Mira stared out the window at the city lights. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. The right thing is protecting yourself. Is that what you do? Protect yourself? The question cut deeper than she probably knew. I try to, Adrian admitted. Doesn't always work. They stood together in the quiet, and Adrian felt the distance between them shrinking despite his best efforts to maintain it. This was dangerous territory, emotional intimacy that blurred into something else, something neither of them should be feeling. His phone buzzed. Sarah asking if Ethan could stay with her through New Year's as well. Marcus wanted to take them skiing. Adrian texted back a single word. Fine. Your ex? Mira asked. Yeah. You give her everything she asks for. It's easier than fighting. That's sad. That's reality. Mira turned to face him fully. Do you ever just want something? Not what's smart or safe or responsible. Just something that makes you feel alive? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. All the time, Adrian said quietly. Her hand found his, fingers interlacing with a certainty that scared him. Then why don't you take it? Because I'm 32 years old with a son who needs stability. Because you're living in my apartment and the power dynamic is completely fucked. Because if I cross this line and it goes wrong, I'll have hurt someone who deserves better. Because I'm terrified. It's complicated, he said instead. Everything's complicated. Mira stepped closer. Maybe we deserve something simple for once. Adrian should have pulled away. Should have said no, established boundaries, done the responsible thing. Instead, he lifted his other hand to her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. This is a terrible idea, he whispered. Probably. They stood there, suspended in the moment before everything changed. Adrian could feel her heartbeat through their joined hands, could see the vulnerability and want in her eyes that probably mirrored his own. His phone rang again. They broke apart. Jenny, his assistant, with an emergency about the Tokyo deal that needed immediate attention. Adrian took the call, spent 20 minutes solving a problem that could have waited until morning, and when he hung up, Mira was gone. Her door was closed. The moment had passed. Adrian stood alone in his pristine living room, surrounded by silence and expensive furniture and the crushing weight of all the things he couldn't let himself want. The next 2 weeks were careful. They talked less, avoided being alone together, maintained polite distance that felt like dying slowly. Mira threw herself into her new project, working 16-hour days and emerging from her room only for coffee and brief, strained conversations. Adrian buried himself in work, traveled to San Francisco for meetings, came home to an empty apartment because Mira was always in her room. He missed her, which was ridiculous because she lived 20 feet away, but he missed the ease they'd had, the conversations, the comfortable silences, the feeling that someone understood him. Christmas came and went. Adrian spent it alone, ordering takeout and watching Ethan's school play on a video Sarah had sent. Mira flew to Portland and came back 3 days later looking exhausted and sad. How was it? Adrian asked when he saw her in the kitchen. David's great. His girlfriend's nice. They're happy. And your mom? Didn't see her. She canceled last minute. New boyfriend had other plans for her. Mira poured coffee with shaking hands. I'm apparently not worth rearranging a schedule for. Mira, I'm fine. It's fine. I'm used to it. But her voice cracked on the last word. Adrian moved before thinking, pulling her into a hug. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, shaking with silent sobs. They stood like that for a long time, her crying into his shoulder, him holding her together, both of them pretending this was just comfort and nothing more. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. Thank you. Anytime. She went to her room. Adrian stood in the kitchen, still feeling the ghost of her in his arms. He was so fucked. New Year's Eve, Mira had plans with friends from her design program. Adrian had been invited to 3 different parties and declined them all. He'd stay home, maybe call Ethan at midnight, probably be asleep by 11. But Mira came back at 10:30. He heard the door open, heard her heels in the hallway, looked up from his laptop to see her standing there in a black dress that made his chest tight, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. You're home early, he said. Everyone was coupled up. I felt like the sad single friend. She kicked off her heels, padding barefoot across the living room. What are you doing? Working. On New Year's Eve. It's just another night. That's the saddest thing I've heard all year. She grabbed the laptop from him, set it aside. Come on. Where are we going? The roof. The building has that observation deck. We're watching the fireworks. Mira, no arguments. You're not spending the new year alone staring at spreadsheets. She pulled him up, and Adrian went because fighting her felt impossible lately. They took the elevator to the top floor, climbed the stairs to the rooftop deck. The city sprawled below them, lights everywhere, the distant sound of parties and celebrations drifting up. See? Mira said, leaning on the railing. Better than your laptop. Marginally. She laughed, and the sound made something in Adrian's chest crack open. They stood together in the cold, waiting for midnight. Other residents drifted onto the deck, couples mostly, kissing and laughing and wrapped up in each other. Adrian and Mira stood separate, careful not to touch. What are you hoping for? She asked quietly. Next year. I don't know. Stability, I guess. For Ethan to be happy. For work to feel like more than just maintaining. That's very practical. What are you hoping for? Mira was quiet for a moment. To matter. To someone. For something I do or say or create to actually make a difference in the world. She glanced at him. And maybe to stop feeling so alone all the time. You're not alone. I know, because of you. Her voice was barely audible over the city noise. You saved me, Adrian. I know you'll say you didn't, that you just gave me a room, but I didn't save you. You saved yourself. We saved each other then. The countdown started somewhere below. 10, 9, 8. Adrian turned to face her fully. Mira, I know what you're going to say. Her eyes were bright in the darkness. That this can't happen. That I live in your apartment and you're technically my landlord and the power dynamic is all wrong. That you have a son and a company and I'm just some broke designer you took pity on. I never pitied you. And you're probably right about all of it. But right now, standing here, I don't care about any of that. I just care that you're the only person who makes me feel like myself. 3, 2, 1. Fireworks exploded across the sky, and Adrian, responsible, controlled Adrian who'd spent 2 years building walls around his heart, leaned in and kissed her. It was brief, gentle, over almost before it started, but it changed everything. When he pulled back, Mira was staring at him with wide eyes. We can't, Adrian said hoarsely. I know. I know. They stood there while fireworks painted the sky and the whole city celebrated, and neither of them moved. Finally, Mira stepped back. I should go inside. Yeah. She walked away, and Adrian stood alone on the roof, watching the fireworks fade and wondering what the hell he'd just done. The first week of January felt like walking through glass. Adrian went to work, came home. avoided Mira as much as physically possible in a space where they shared walls and air and the memory of a kiss that should never have happened. She did the same, moving through the apartment like a ghost, headphones always in, eyes always down. They'd broken something fragile, and neither of them knew how to fix it. On Thursday evening, Adrian found a note on the kitchen counter. Mira's handwriting, neat and careful. Found an apartment. Moving out end of month. Thank you for everything. He stared at the note for 10 minutes, then crumpled it and threw it away. This was good. This was the right thing. She'd get her own place, establish independence, and they could both pretend the last 3 months hadn't happened. Clean break, smart decision. So why did it feel like losing something irreplaceable? Ethan came back that weekend full of stories about skiing with Marcus and how Sarah's boyfriend could do tricks on the slopes that looked super cool, Dad. Adrian listened, smiled in the right places, tried not to think about how his 7-year-old son talked about another man with more enthusiasm than he'd shown for anything Adrian had done in months. Is Mira still here? Ethan asked over breakfast Saturday morning. Yeah, why? She's nice. She showed me how to draw perspective last time. Can I show her my ski pictures? She's probably busy, buddy. But Mira emerged from her room 20 minutes later, drawn by Ethan's excited chatter about black diamond runs and hot chocolate. She sat with him at the kitchen table, looking at phone photos and asking questions that made Ethan light up. Adrian watched from the counter, coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. This was what he'd been avoiding. The three of them together, the way it felt almost like a family. Dangerous territory. Impossible territory. Your dad used to ski, Mira told Ethan. The boy's eyes went wide. Really? Adrian set down his cup. A long time ago. Why'd you stop? Got busy with work. That's sad, Ethan said with the blunt honesty only children managed. You should do fun stuff too, Dad. Mira's eyes met Adrian's across the kitchen, and something passed between them that made his chest tight. Later, after Ethan had gone to his room to build Lego, Mira cornered Adrian by the coffee maker. We need to talk. About what? Don't do that. Don't pretend nothing happened. Adrian poured coffee he didn't want. You're moving out. That's probably for the best. Is it? Mira, because it doesn't feel like the best. It feels like we're both running away from something that scared us. She crossed her arms. I kissed you back on New Year's. I wanted to, and I know that's complicated and messy and probably a dozen kinds of wrong, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. What do you want me to say? The truth. Adrian set down his cup hard enough that coffee splashed. The truth is, I'm 32 years old with a kid and an ex-wife and a company that employs 3,000 people. The truth is, you've been living in my apartment for 3 months because you had nowhere else to go, which means any relationship between us is built on the world's most fucked up power dynamic. The truth is you feel it too. He stopped, looked at her, saw the challenge and vulnerability warring in her expression. Yeah, he admitted quietly. I do. So what are we going to do about it? Nothing. Because doing something would be selfish and stupid and would probably hurt both of us in ways we can't take back. Mira laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're so controlled, so careful. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? I have responsibilities. I'm not asking you to abandon your kid and run away with me. I'm asking if you ever let yourself want anything that isn't safe and planned and completely under your control. The question landed like a punch. Before Adrian could answer, Ethan appeared in the doorway. Dad, can we go to the park? Sure, buddy. Give me 5 minutes. Ethan disappeared again. Mira was already walking away. This conversation isn't over, she said without turning around. Adrian stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by expensive appliances and marble countertops and the crushing weight of choices he didn't know how to make. The next morning, Mira canceled her apartment lease. Adrian found out when he overheard her on the phone with the landlord, apologizing but explaining she'd changed her mind. When she hung up, she found him standing in the hallway. I'm staying, she said before he could ask. Not forever. Just until I figure out what I actually want instead of just running from what scares me. And what scares you? This, you, feeling something real for the first time in my life and not knowing if it's just because you're kind or if it's actually real. Adrian should have argued, should have told her leaving was smarter, safer for both of them. Instead, he said, "Okay." They existed in limbo after that. Not quite together, not quite apart, careful around each other in ways that felt exhausting. The ease they'd had before New Year's was gone, replaced by tension that made every interaction feel weighted with things unsaid. But they kept talking. Late nights when Ethan was asleep and work was done, and neither of them could pretend they didn't want the other's company. They'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, maintaining careful distance, and have conversations that got deeper and more honest than anything Adrian had experienced in years. Mira told him about her first serious relationship, a guy in art school who'd seemed perfect until she realized he wanted a muse, not a partner. How he'd loved her work, but not her. Loved the idea of dating an artist, but hated the reality of someone with her own ambitions and needs. "He wanted me to be beautiful and tragic and inspiring," she said, "but also convenient, available whenever he needed me, invisible when he didn't." "What happened?" "I got tired of performing, told him I needed more. He said I was being selfish." She pulled her knees up. "I believed him for a while. Thought maybe I was asking too much." "You weren't." "How do you know?" "Because wanting to be seen as a whole person isn't selfish. It's basic." Mira looked at him with something like wonder. "You get that. You actually get it." Adrian told her about the early days with Sarah, how they'd met at a tech conference where she was networking for her PR firm and he was pitching investors. How she'd been magnetic, ambitious, exactly the kind of partner he thought he needed, someone who understood the game, who wanted the same things. "Except we didn't want the same things," he said. "She wanted the lifestyle, the status. I wanted to build something that mattered. When the money came, she saw it as the end game. I saw it as a tool." "Did you love her?" "I thought I did. Now I think I love the idea of us, the power couple, the success story. I didn't love who she actually was underneath all that." "Does she love Ethan?" The question hurt more than it should have. "In her way. But she loves herself more. And she loves Marcus and the life he offers her more than she loves being a mother." "That's fucked up." "Yeah." Adrian rubbed his face. "It is." These conversations happened in the dark, both of them too tired to pretend anymore. And somewhere in those late nights, the careful distance started breaking down. A hand on a shoulder became normal. Sitting closer on the couch stopped feeling dangerous. When Mira fell asleep during a documentary about mid-century design, Adrian didn't just cover her with a blanket. He stayed there, watching her breathe, terrified by how much he wanted this to be his life. February came in cold and gray. Ethan turned 8 with a party Sarah organized at some indoor adventure park, where Adrian showed up, smiled for photos, and left after 2 hours because watching his ex-wife play happy family with her boyfriend made his jaw ache from clenching. Mira had offered to come, provide moral support, but Adrian had refused. "It's better if you don't," he'd said. "Why?" "Because Sarah will ask questions I don't want to answer." "What questions?" "Who you are. What you mean to me." He'd looked at her then, really looked at her. "And I don't know how to answer those." Mira had gone quiet. "Figure it out, Adrian. Because this limbo is killing me." She'd started pulling away after that, working longer hours, taking calls from friends he'd never heard her mention before, going out on Thursday nights to networking events she didn't invite him to, creating distance that felt deliberate. Adrian hated it. Hated coming home to an empty apartment even though she was just in her room. Hated the careful politeness that had replaced their easy intimacy. Hated that he'd done this, created a situation so complicated that the only solutions were painful. One Wednesday evening, he found her in the kitchen making dinner. Actual dinner, not just reheating leftovers. Pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread warming in the oven. "What's the occasion?" he asked. "No occasion. I just felt like cooking." She didn't look at him. "There's enough for 2 if you want some." They ate in silence at first. Then Mira set down her fork. "I got offered a job." Adrian's stomach dropped. "Where?" "Seattle. Design firm that does work for tech companies. Good salary, benefits, actual stability." She pushed pasta around her plate. "They want me to start in March." That's great. Congratulations." "I haven't accepted yet." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to go to Seattle." Her voice cracked. "I want to stay here. But I can't keep living like this, waiting for you to decide what I mean to you, if I mean anything, if this is just convenient companionship, or if it's actually, it's not convenient. Then what is it? Adrian set down his own fork, met her eyes. It's terrifying. You're terrifying. Because I'm broke and living in your apartment? Because you make me want things I gave up on. Because when you're around, I feel like myself instead of just some role I'm playing. Because Ethan asks about you when you're not here, and I don't know what to tell him. He stopped, chest tight. Because I'm falling for you, and I have no idea how to do this without fucking everything up. Mira went completely still. Say that again? Which part? The falling part. Adrian stood, paced to the window, stared out at the city lights. I'm falling for you, have been for months. And I know that's complicated and messy and the timing is terrible, but it's the truth. He heard her chair scrape back, felt her approach, her presence warm at his shoulder. Adrian? He turned. She was right there, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her gray eyes. Close enough that when she reached up to touch his face, he felt it everywhere. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. And it scares the hell out of me because you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I'm enough exactly as I am. No performing, no pretending, just me. You are enough. Then why does it feel like we're still holding back? Because I'm terrified of screwing this up, Adrian thought. Because you deserve better than a divorced single father with too much money and not enough time. Because if I let myself have this and it falls apart, I don't know how I'll survive it. But what he said was, I don't know. Mira's hand dropped. She stepped back and the loss of contact felt physical. I'm going to turn down the Seattle job, she said, but I'm also going to find my own place. Because I can't stay here anymore, not like this. It hurts too much. Mira, no, you don't get to tell me it's complicated and you're falling for me and then ask me to keep waiting in limbo. I deserve better than that. Her voice shook but held firm. We both do. She walked away, and Adrian stood at the window watching his reflection, hating the coward staring back. The next 2 weeks were agony. Mira found an apartment in a building 20 minutes away. Nothing fancy, just a studio with decent light and rent she could afford now that her design work was steady. She'd move at the end of the month. They were polite, distant. Adrian threw himself into work, traveled to Boston for meetings he could have done via video call, came home to find Mira packing boxes in her room. Ethan asked why she was leaving. She needs her own space, buddy. But she's happy here. I can tell. It's more complicated than that. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain. Ethan crossed his arms, looking exactly like Adrian when he was frustrated. I think you're being dumb, Dad. That's enough. She makes you smile, like really smile. And you're going to let her leave? Adrian had no answer for that. The night before Mira's move, Adrian came home to find her sitting on the living room floor surrounded by half-packed boxes, crying quietly into her hands. He dropped his briefcase, crossed the room, knelt beside her. What happened? My mom. The words came out broken. She called, needed money again. I told her I couldn't help, that I'm barely stable myself, and Mira's voice cracked. She said I'm a disappointment, that I've always been selfish, that she wishes I'd turned out more like David. She's wrong. Is she? Mira looked up, mascara streaked down her face. I can't even help my own mother. What kind of person does that make me? The kind who's learned to protect herself from people who only want what you can give them. Adrian reached out, wiped tears from her cheek with his thumb. Your mother doesn't call because she loves you. She calls because she needs something. That's not your fault. It feels like my fault. I know. They sat there on the floor, surrounded by boxes and the remains of 3 months that had changed everything. Mira leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and Adrian held her while she cried. When she finally quieted, she didn't pull away. I don't want to leave, she whispered. Then don't. I have to. If I stay, I'll keep hoping for something that might not happen, and that hope will destroy me. What if it does happen? Mira lifted her head, looked at him. What are you saying? Adrian cupped her face in both hands, thumbs brushing away the last tears. I'm saying I don't want you to go. I'm saying these months with you have been the first time I've felt alive since my marriage ended. I'm saying I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of losing you. Adrian, I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I love how you take your coffee black and hum while you work. I love that you ask me hard questions and call me out when I'm being closed off. I love that Ethan lights up when you're around and you treat him like he matters, not like he's some obligation you tolerate. I love... Mira kissed him. Not like New Year's, brief and tentative. This was desperate, necessary, months of want finally breaking free. Adrian kissed her back, pulling her closer, tasting salt from her tears and something else that was just her. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mira's eyes were wide. "We can't," she said, even as her hands fisted in his shirt. "I know. You have Ethan and the custody situation, and your ex-wife will probably use this against you. I know. And I'm still technically your tenant, and the power dynamic is all kinds of fucked up. I know." Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. "But I don't care anymore. I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of doing what's smart instead of what I want. I want you. This is a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had. Your son loves you, asks about you constantly, would be thrilled if you stuck around." Mira pulled back enough to search his face. "You're serious?" "Completely. What if we screw this up? What if it falls apart and ruins everything?" "Then at least we tried." Adrian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'd rather risk everything than spend the rest of my life wondering what if." She was quiet for a long moment, emotions chasing across her face too fast to name. Then she kissed him again, softer this time, like a promise. "Okay," she whispered against his mouth. "Okay." They stayed on the floor for hours, talking through logistics and fears, and what this would actually mean. Adrian would tell Sarah, deal with whatever fallout came from dating someone he'd been living with. Mira would keep her new apartment as backup, maintain independence, make sure this wasn't just proximity masquerading as love. They'd go slow. Be careful with Ethan. Figure it out as they went. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was real. The next morning, Mira still moved her things to the new apartment. They both agreed she needed her own space, needed to prove to herself this wasn't about convenience or desperation. But that night, she came back for dinner. Ethan was thrilled. "Does this mean Mira's your girlfriend, Dad?" Adrian glanced at Mira, who was trying not to smile. "Would that be okay with you?" "Are you kidding? That's awesome." Ethan high-fived Mira. "Can you teach me more drawing stuff?" "Definitely." They ate spaghetti and watched a movie Ethan picked, and it felt achingly normal, like family, like something Adrian had stopped believing he could have. Later, after Ethan was in bed, Mira and Adrian sat on the couch with careful space between them. "You okay?" he asked. Terrified. "You?" "Same." She reached for his hand, interlaced their fingers. "We're really doing this." "Yeah." "Your ex is going to lose her mind." "Probably." "Your employees are going to gossip." "Definitely." "People are going to judge. Say I'm with you for money. Say you're taking advantage." Adrian squeezed her hand. "Let them. I know the truth. So do you." Mira leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you too. I forgot to say it back earlier, but I do." "I know." They sat in comfortable silence, and for the first time in years, Adrian felt something like peace. The next few weeks were a study in navigating new territory. They went on actual dates, dinners at restaurants, walks through the city, a museum visit where Mira explained design principles while Adrian pretended to understand. It felt strange and wonderful, doing normal couple things after months of living in each other's space. Adrian told Sarah during a custody handoff. She'd stared at him for a full 10 seconds, then laughed. "The girl from your building? The one who was crashing with you?" She wasn't crashing. She was renting a room. "Adrian, come on. How does this look?" "I don't care how it looks." Sarah's expression hardened. "I could make this an issue. Use it in custody negotiations." "You could, but you won't, because you know damn well you don't want full custody. You barely want the custody you have." It was cruel, but it was also true. Sarah flinched. "Just don't parade her around Ethan. He doesn't need confusion." "Ethan adores her. He's not confused. He's happy." Sarah had no response to that. Telling his company was easier. Adrian simply started bringing Mira to events, introduced her as his girlfriend, let people draw their own conclusions. Some eyebrows were raised. Jenny, his assistant, looked concerned but didn't say anything beyond be careful. The hardest part was balancing everything. Mira had her own life now, her apartment, her clients, her independence. She didn't want to be absorbed into Adrian's world. He respected that, even when it meant going days without seeing her because she was buried in a project or he was traveling for work. They argued sometimes, about time, about expectations, about the fact that Adrian's instinct was still to control everything, while Mira's was to push back against any hint of being managed. "I'm not one of your employees," she said during one particularly tense conversation. "You can't schedule me like a meeting." "I'm not trying to schedule you. I'm trying to plan time together." "No, you're trying to fit me into your existing structure." "That's different." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to be spontaneous occasionally, to not treat every moment like it needs to be optimized." Adrian had no idea how to do that. But he tried. Started suggesting last-minute dinners, showing up at her apartment unannounced, learning to be okay with plans that shifted and changed. It was uncomfortable. It was also kind of amazing. Mira taught him to cook actual meals instead of just reheating takeout, dragged him to underground art shows in neighborhoods he'd never visited, made him laugh at stupid jokes and bad movies and the absurdity of life. He taught her to ski, took her and Ethan on a weekend trip where they all fell down repeatedly and laughed until they couldn't breathe. Showed her the parts of his business he actually cared about, the innovation, the problem-solving, the moments when technology actually improved people's lives. They were building something, not perfect, not always easy, but real. One night in late March, lying in Mira's apartment after Ethan had gone to bed and Adrian had driven across town just to see her, she turned to him. "Do you ever worry this is too good to last?" "Constantly." "What do we do about that?" Adrian pulled her closer. "We show up anyway. We keep choosing each other even when it's hard. We build something strong enough that when the bad days come, and they will, we don't break." "That simple?" "That complicated." She laughed, soft against his chest. "I'm glad I stayed." "Me too." But in the back of his mind, Adrian wondered how long they could maintain this balance, how long before something shifted, before the complications they were ignoring became impossible to overlook. He pushed the thought away, focused on now, on this moment, on the woman in his arms, who'd somehow become essential. The future could wait, except the future had plans of its own. It started falling apart on a Tuesday in April. Adrian was in Chicago for a 3-day conference, the kind of industry event where everyone pretended to care about innovation while actually networking for their next career move. He'd been on panels, shaken hands, smiled until his face ached. His phone had been full of messages from Mira, photos of her latest design work, a funny story about her landlord, a video of Ethan showing off a skateboard trick he'd learned. Normal things, good things. Then his phone rang at 11 p.m. Sarah's name on the screen made his stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Ethan's fine," she said immediately, which meant something else wasn't. "But we need to talk about your girlfriend." Adrian stepped out of the hotel bar where he'd been having drinks with investors. "What about her?" "Marcus did some digging. Found out she was living with you before you started dating. That's going to look really bad in court, Adrian." "Court? What are you talking about?" "I'm filing for full custody." Sarah's voice was calm, practiced. "You're in an inappropriate relationship with someone who was financially dependent on you. That shows poor judgment. A judge will agree." Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. "You don't want full custody. You've never wanted it." "Maybe I've changed my mind. Maybe I'm concerned about the environment my son is being exposed to." "This is about money. Marcus wants you to go after more child support." Silence. Then, "Don't make this ugly." "You're the one making it ugly. Mira has nothing to do with Ethan's well-being. She's good for him. He's happy. She's a gold digger who saw an opportunity." "Don't." Adrian's voice went hard. "Don't talk about her like you know anything. You want to go after me, fine, but leave her out of it." "I can't leave her out of it when she's living in your house. She has her own apartment, has had one for 2 months. But she stayed with you for 3 months before that, while you were divorced and vulnerable and she was broke. How does that look, Adrian? Really think about how that looks." He thought about it. Hated that Sarah had a point, even if her motivations were garbage. "I'll have my lawyer call yours," he said. "This doesn't have to be a fight. Just end it with her. Show some stability. Maybe we can work something out." Adrian hung up. He stood in the hotel hallway, fighting the urge to put his fist through the wall. Instead, he called Mira. "Hey," she answered, sounding sleepy. "How's Chicago?" "Sarah's threatening to sue for full custody. She's using you as evidence of poor judgment." Silence on the other end. Then, "Oh. My lawyer says it's bullshit. She won't win, but it's going to be messy and public and—" He stopped, rubbed his face. "I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault. It kind of is. I knew dating you would complicate things. I did it anyway. Adrian, I need to think. Figure out how to handle this. I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up before she could respond, immediately regretted it, but didn't call back. The next 2 days in Chicago were hell. Adrian went through the motions, made the required appearances, and spent every spare minute on the phone with his lawyer. The situation was complicated, but not impossible. Sarah had no real grounds for full custody. Her own parenting was inconsistent at best. But the optics were bad. Successful billionaire starts dating a younger woman who'd been living in his apartment rent-free. Except she hadn't been rent-free. Except the timeline proved they'd been careful, hadn't started dating until she'd moved out. Except every custody evaluator who'd met Mira said she was a positive influence on Ethan. Facts didn't matter as much as narrative. And the narrative Sarah was building made Adrian look like a man who'd taken advantage of a vulnerable woman, then exposed his young son to an inappropriate relationship. "We can fight this," his lawyer said. "But it's going to get ugly. She'll dig into Mira's background, look for anything questionable. Her financial struggles, her family dysfunction, any past relationships that look bad. Mira hasn't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter. In custody battles, everyone's dirty laundry gets aired. You need to prepare her for that." Adrian flew home Thursday night, exhausted and angry, and dreading the conversation he needed to have. He went straight to Mira's apartment, using the key she'd given him last month. She was awake, sitting on her couch with her laptop, surrounded by design mock-ups. She looked up when he came in. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks." "I mean it. You look like you haven't slept in 3 days." "I haven't." Adrian dropped onto the couch beside her. "Sarah's serious about this. Her lawyer sent over preliminary paperwork. They're claiming I exposed Ethan to an unstable home environment by having you live there. I barely saw Ethan when I was staying with you, maybe 5 times total. I know, but they're going to twist everything, make it look sordid and calculated." He looked at her. "They're going to come after you, your finances, your family, your past, everything." Mira closed her laptop slowly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this is going to get really bad before it gets better. And I need to know if you're ready for that." "Are you asking if I'm going to run?" "I'm asking if this is what you signed up for, because I would understand if it's not." She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "I'm not going anywhere. If Sarah wants to drag me through court, fine. I've got nothing to hide. My family's a mess, but that's not a secret. I've been broke, but I've never cheated or lied or hurt anyone. Let her dig." "Mira, I love you. I love Ethan. I'm not letting your ex-wife's power play scare me off." She reached for his hand. "We're in this together, right?" "That's what you said." Adrian pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "Yeah, together." But he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd dragged her into something she didn't deserve. The custody battle started officially the following week. Sarah filed paperwork. Adrian's lawyer responded. Mediators got involved. Everything Adrian had worked to keep stable and controlled started spiraling. Ethan knew something was wrong. "Are you and Mom fighting again?" he asked one evening after a particularly tense phone call. "Sort of." "About Mira?" Adrian hesitated. Lying to his kid felt wrong, but so did burdening him with adult problems. "Your mom and I disagree about some things, but it's not your fault, and it's not Mira's fault. It's just grown-up stuff we need to work out. I don't want to stop seeing Mira. You're not going to stop seeing her. Promise?" Adrian couldn't promise that. If Sarah won full custody, she could restrict Mira's access completely. But he couldn't tell his 8-year-old son that. "I promise I'll do everything I can," he said instead. Ethan didn't look reassured. The stress bled into everything. Adrian was short-tempered at work, snapping at employees over minor issues. He stopped sleeping well, lying awake running through worst-case scenarios. What if he lost custody? What if Ethan ended up living full-time with Sarah and Marcus? What if his son grew up thinking Adrian had chosen a woman over him? Mira tried to help, but her presence sometimes made it worse. Every moment they spent together felt like ammunition Sarah could use. Every time Mira came to his apartment or they went out in public, Adrian wondered who was watching, who might report back. "You're pulling away," Mira said one night. They were supposed to be having dinner, but Adrian had barely touched his food, too busy checking his phone for updates from his lawyer. "I'm not. You are. You've been distant for 2 weeks, barely talking. When I ask what's wrong, you say you're fine." "I am fine." "Adrian, look at me." He did. She looked exhausted too, shadows under her eyes that matched his own. "I need you to talk to me," she said. "I can't help if you shut me out." "You can't help, that's the problem. This whole situation is because of—" He stopped himself. "Because of me," Mira finished quietly. "You were going to say this is because of me. No. Because of us. Because I made a choice to be with you and now it's being used against me. So you regret it." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." She stood, grabbed her coat. "I'm going home." "Mira, wait." "No. You need to figure out what you actually want. Because right now it feels like you're resenting me for existing." She left before he could argue. Adrian sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by silence and the wreckage of the life he'd tried to build. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe his judgment had been compromised. Maybe he'd been selfish, pursuing something he wanted without thinking about the consequences for Ethan. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. "Mediation scheduled for next week. Sarah's team is pushing hard on the cohabitation angle. Need to discuss strategy." Adrian threw his phone across the room. The next few days, he and Mira barely spoke. She was giving him space he hadn't asked for, but maybe needed. He threw himself into preparing for mediation, working with his lawyer to build a defense that didn't make him look like a complete idiot. "The key is showing stability," his lawyer explained. "Consistent routine with Ethan. Evidence of Mira's positive influence. Character witnesses who can testify that you're a good father." "I am a good father. I know. But we need to prove it. And we need to prove that your relationship with Mira isn't the reckless decision Sarah's making it out to be." Except it had been reckless. Adrian knew that. He'd fallen for a woman living in his apartment, started a relationship built on proximity and loneliness, and the desperate need to feel something real. The fact that it had turned into actual love didn't change how it started. The night before mediation, Mira showed up at his door. "We need to talk," she said. Adrian let her in. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the physical distance feeling symbolic. "I've been thinking," Mira started, "about what's best for everyone." Adrian's stomach clenched. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't sacrifice yourself for this. That's what you're about to say, right? That maybe we should take a break until the custody thing is resolved. That it would be easier for everyone if you just stepped back." "Would it be easier?" "Maybe. But it would also be bullshit." Adrian moved closer. "I love you. That doesn't change because my ex-wife is being vindictive." "But your son." "My son loves you too, and he deserves to have people in his life who care about him. You're one of those people." Mira's eyes were wet. "I don't want to be the reason you lose him." "You're not. Sarah is. This is about control and money, not about what's actually best for Ethan." He took her hand. "I know I've been difficult. I know I've been pulling away and that's not fair to you, but don't leave. Please." "I'm scared, Adrian. I'm scared this whole thing is going to blow up and destroy everything we've built. I'm scared that people are going to say terrible things about me and you'll start believing them. I'm scared." He kissed her, pulled her close, and kissed her like he was trying to prove something, maybe to her, maybe to himself. When they broke apart, Mira was crying. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I'm not leaving." "Okay. But you have to let me in. You have to stop trying to protect me from this and let me actually be part of it." "Okay." They held each other in the dark, and Adrian felt some of the crushing weight ease. Not gone, but bearable. The mediation was exactly as terrible as expected. Sarah showed up with Marcus and her lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit who had clearly done his homework. Adrian had Mira wait outside, his lawyer's advice to avoid inflaming things. They sat around a conference table while the mediator tried to establish common ground. There wasn't any. Sarah's position was clear. Adrian's relationship with Mira demonstrated poor judgment. The fact that she'd been living with him, that the relationship had started so soon after their divorce, that Ethan was being exposed to an unstable situation, all of it pointed to Adrian being unfit for equal custody. Adrian's lawyer countered with facts. Mira had paid rent. The relationship had started after she'd moved out. Every evaluation showed Ethan was thriving. Sarah's own inconsistent parenting was well documented. It went in circles for 3 hours. Finally, the mediator suggested a break. Adrian stepped out, found Mira sitting in the hallway looking small and scared. "How's it going?" she asked. "About as well as expected." "What does that mean?" "It means Sarah's team is good at making everything sound worse than it is. And my team is trying to prove I'm not a complete disaster as a father." Mira stood, faced him. "You're an amazing father. Ethan knows that. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you knows that." "Yeah, well, custody evaluators spend more than 5 minutes." "Adrian," his lawyer appeared in the doorway. "We're ready to resume." Adrian went back in. The afternoon session was worse than the morning. Sarah's lawyer started bringing up specifics. Dates Mira had been seen entering or leaving Adrian's apartment, financial records showing her precarious situation when she'd moved in, testimony from building employees about how often she'd been around. It was invasive and humiliating and completely legal. When mediation finally ended at 6 p.m., nothing was resolved. They'd try again next week. In the meantime, the current custody arrangement would stay in place. Adrian walked out feeling like he'd been in a fight. Mira was still waiting. "I need a drink," he said. They went to a bar 3 blocks away, somewhere dark and anonymous, where Adrian could stop being the billionaire whose personal life was being dissected in conference rooms. They sat in a back booth and ordered whiskey neither of them really wanted. "I hate this," Mira said after her first sip. "I hate that they're making us into some sordid story when it's not. We didn't do anything wrong. Doesn't matter what we did. Matters what they can prove we did. That's depressing. That's the legal system." Mira was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if I testified?" "No? Why not? I could explain how it actually happened, how you helped me when I needed it, but there were boundaries, nothing inappropriate." "They'll tear you apart." Sarah's lawyer will ask about every choice you've ever made, every relationship you've had, every dollar you've borrowed. He'll make you look desperate and calculating. "I can handle it. I don't want you to have to." "This isn't about what you want." Mira's voice was sharp. "This is about Ethan, and if my testimony helps keep him with you, then I'll do it." Adrian looked at her, this woman who'd been through hell already, offering to go through more for his kid. "You don't have to save me," he said quietly. "I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to help you keep your son." They finished their drinks in silence. When they left the bar, Adrian's phone was full of messages, from his lawyer, from Jenny asking about tomorrow's meetings, from Ethan's school about an upcoming field trip. Normal life continuing while everything fell apart. That night, Mira stayed at Adrian's apartment. They didn't talk much, just existed in the same space, finding comfort in proximity. When they finally went to bed, Adrian held her close and tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. But tomorrow came anyway. The second mediation session was shorter and somehow worse. Sarah's team had doubled down, bringing in a child psychologist who testified about the potential harm of exposing children to unstable relationships. Adrian's lawyer fought back, but the damage was done. During a break, Sarah cornered Adrian in the hallway. "This doesn't have to continue," she said. "End it with her. Show the court you're prioritizing Ethan. I'll drop the custody challenge. You want me to break up with Mira to make you happy. I want you to break up with her to keep your son. That's not the same thing." "It is from where I'm standing." Sarah crossed her arms. "You want to date someone? Fine. But wait until the ink is dry on the custody agreement. Date someone appropriate, not some broke girl you rescued who probably sees you as a meal ticket. Don't talk about her like that. I'm telling you how the judge will see it, how everyone sees it. You're a 32-year-old billionaire. She's a struggling artist who is living in your apartment. Come on, Adrian, even you can't be that naive." She walked away, leaving Adrian standing in the hallway feeling sick. Because part of him, the part he hated, wondered if she was right. Not about Mira being a gold digger. He knew that was bullshit. but about the optics, about how a judge might view things, about whether his choice to be with her was selfish when weighed against keeping custody of his son. The mediation ended with no resolution. They'd go to court. A judge would decide. Adrian's lawyer pulled him aside afterward. I need to be honest with you. This is going to be close. Judges are unpredictable in custody cases, and Sarah's team has built a compelling narrative. What are my chances? 60-40 in your favor, maybe, but that 40% is real. Adrian went home and stared at the city lights for 2 hours, trying to figure out what the right choice was. Ethan needed him, but Mira needed him too, and he needed her in ways he couldn't fully articulate. He called her. I need to see you. Now? It's almost midnight. Please. She came. Let herself in with her key, found him standing at the windows. What happened? Sarah offered me a deal. Drop you. She drops the custody challenge. Mira went very still. And you're considering it? No. Yes, I don't know. Adrian turned to face her. If I lose Ethan, I lose everything that matters. But if I lose you, you don't lose anything. I'm not your kid. I'm just the woman you're dating. You're not just anything. Then what am I? Her voice rose. Because right now it feels like I'm the problem you're trying to solve, the complication making your life difficult. That's not fair, isn't it? You've been pulling away for weeks, treating me like I'm fragile or dangerous or both, and now your ex gives you an ultimatum and you're actually thinking about it. I have to think about Ethan. I know that. I'm not asking you to choose me over your son. I would never ask that, but I'm asking you to stop treating me like I'm something you can just put on hold until your life is convenient again. Adrian crossed the room, grabbed her shoulders. I'm not trying to put you on hold. I'm trying to figure out how to keep everyone I love in my life without destroying everything. You can't control this, Adrian. You can't plan it or strategize it or make it work out perfectly. Sometimes life is just messy and hard and you have to make impossible choices. I don't want to choose. Then don't. Mira pulled away. But stop treating me like I'm the problem. I didn't create this situation. Your ex did. Your messy divorce did. This whole custody battle is happening because Sarah wants more money, not because of anything I did. I know that. Do you? Because right now it feels like you're looking for someone to blame and I'm convenient. She was right. Adrian knew she was right. He'd been doing exactly that, looking for a way to control the uncontrollable, and the easiest target was his relationship with Mira. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I don't want an apology. I want you to decide what you actually want, because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep waiting for you to choose me when it's convenient. I'm not. You are, and I get it. Your son comes first. He should. But if we're going to be together, I need to be more than just someone you see when it doesn't complicate things. I need to actually matter. You do matter. Then prove it. She left. Adrian stood alone in his apartment, surrounded by all the trappings of success that suddenly felt completely meaningless. The next week was torture. He and Mira didn't talk. She didn't come by, didn't text, didn't respond when he reached out. Adrian told himself it was better this way, less complicated, fewer issues for Sarah's lawyers to exploit. It felt like dying. Ethan noticed immediately. Where's Mira, Tits? He asked after 3 days. She's been busy with work. Can I text her? Maybe give her some space right now, buddy. Did you guys have a fight? Adrian didn't know how to answer that. Sort of. You should apologize. That's what you always tell me to do when I fight with my friends. It's more complicated than that. Why do adults always say that? Good question. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Adrian's lawyer said it would take most of the day. Testimony from both sides, character witnesses, evaluation reports. Then the judge would decide. Adrian couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, threw himself into work because it was the only thing he could control. On Thursday night, his doorbell rang. He opened it to find Mira standing there, and she looked wrecked. Hair messy, eyes red, wearing sweatpants and one of his old t-shirts she must have taken months ago. I can't do this, she said. Adrian's chest went tight. Can't do what? This. Us. I can't keep waiting for everything to fall apart. I can't keep being the complication in your life. Her voice broke. I love you, but I can't keep loving someone who might choose his ex-wife's approval over me. I'm not choosing her approval. You're considering her deal. Don't pretend you're not. Because I might lose my son, and that's terrifying. I know it is. But giving in to her won't fix anything. She'll just keep finding new ways to control you. Mira stepped closer. You have to fight for what you want, Adrian. Not just Ethan. Everything. I am fighting. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're just trying to make everyone else happy while you suffer. Your ex, your lawyers, even me. When do you get to be happy? Adrian had no answer. I came here tonight to end this, Mira said quietly. To tell you I'm done waiting. But standing here looking at you, I can't. Because I love you too much. She reached up, touched his face. I love you, she whispered, and I'm terrified that's not enough. Adrian pulled her inside, kicked the door shut, and kissed her like he was drowning. She kissed back, desperate and broken and real. They stumbled to the bedroom, fell onto the bed still kissing, hands searching, trying to prove something neither could say out loud. Afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Mira spoke. What happens now? I don't know. That's not good enough. Adrian turned to face her. The hearing is in 2 weeks. After that, a judge decides. Whatever happens, we deal with it. Together? If you'll have me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Fight for this. Not just for Ethan, but for us. Because I can't be with someone who's only half in. Her voice shook. I've spent my whole life being an afterthought to people. I can't do that with you. You're not an afterthought. You're... Adrian stopped, searching for words that felt big enough. You're everything I didn't know I needed. And I'm sorry I made you feel like anything less than that. Mira started crying. Not the quiet tears she usually tried to hide, but real, broken sobs. Adrian held her while she fell apart, and somewhere in that moment he made a decision. He was done trying to control everything, done trying to make everyone happy, done sacrificing what he wanted for what seemed safest. He was going to fight. For Ethan. For Mira. For the life he actually wanted instead of the one everyone else thought he should have. When Mira finally quieted, she looked up at him with swollen eyes. I should go home. Stay. Adrian. Stay. Please. I don't want to spend another night without you. She stayed. They didn't sleep much, just talked through all the things they'd been avoiding. The fear, the doubt, the desperate hope that maybe this could actually work. I'm still terrified, Mira admitted as dawn broke outside the windows. Me too. What if we lose? Then we lose. But at least we'll have tried. She curled against him and Adrian felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Messy and complicated and terrifying, but right. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The custody hearing was 11 days away. Those 11 days felt like holding your breath underwater, knowing eventually you'd have to surface. Adrian threw himself into preparing for the hearing with an intensity that bordered on obsession. His lawyer had assembled a case that should have been airtight, documentation of his consistent parenting, testimony from Ethan's teachers about his involvement, financial records proving Mira had paid rent, character witnesses who could speak to both his fitness as a father and her positive influence. But Sarah's team had something more powerful than facts. They had a story that felt true even when it wasn't. Rich man, vulnerable woman, power imbalance, poor judgment. The narrative is what kills us, his lawyer explained during a strategy session 5 days before the hearing. We can prove everything we're saying is factually correct, but stories beat facts in court, especially family court. So what do? We tell a better story, one where you're a devoted father who found love in an unexpected place, where Mira isn't some opportunist but a woman rebuilding her life who happened to meet someone who saw her worth. That's not a story. That's what actually happened. Then we make the judge believe it. Mira sat beside Adrian during these meetings, quiet and pale. Sarah's lawyers had subpoenaed her financial records, her employment history, even therapy notes from when she was 19 and struggling with anxiety after her parents' divorce. Every private thing laid bare for strangers to judge. I feel like I'm on trial, she said after one particularly invasive document request. You are, Adrian's lawyer said bluntly. That's how custody battles work. Everyone gets dragged through the mud. Adrian reached for her hand under the table. She held on tight enough to hurt. The weekend before the hearing, Adrian had Ethan. They went to the park, got ice cream, did normal father-son things while Adrian tried not to think about the possibility that these easy moments might become rare. Supervised visits, every other weekend. His son growing up in Marcus's house. Learning to call another man dad. "You're being weird," Ethan said, chocolate ice cream smeared on his chin. "How am I being weird?" "You keep staring at me like I'm going to disappear." Adrian wiped his son's face with a napkin. "Sorry, buddy. Just tired." "Is it because of the court thing?" Adrian froze. "What do you know about that?" "Mom told me. She said the judge is going to decide where I live." Ethan kicked his feet against the bench. "I don't want to live with her and Marcus all the time. Marcus is okay, but he's not you. Whatever happens, you're still going to see me. That's not changing." Mom said it might. Adrian felt rage flash hot through his chest. Sarah had no business telling their 8-year-old son any of this, putting that fear in his head. "Your mom is wrong. You and me, we're always going to be us. I promise." Ethan looked at him with eyes too serious for his age. "Can Mira still come over, even if the judge says stuff?" "I'll make sure she can." "Good. I like her. She makes you less sad." The simple observation hit harder than it should have. Adrian pulled his son close, held him while people walked past and the world kept turning, and everything he cared about felt fragile as glass. That night, after Ethan was in bed, Mira came over. She'd been giving them space during Adrian's custody weekends, but tonight she'd texted saying she needed to see him. She looked exhausted when she arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater that hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight over the past month. So had Adrian. "I can't sleep," she said, bypassing hello entirely. "Every time I close my eyes, I think about Wednesday, about sitting in that courtroom while Sarah's lawyer asks me about every mistake I've ever made. You don't have to testify. I told you that. And I told you I'm doing it anyway." She paced his living room, agitated energy rolling off her. "But I'm terrified. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make it worse?" "You won't." "You don't know that." Adrian caught her mid-pace, hands on her shoulders. "Hey, look at me." She did. Her eyes were wet. "You're the strongest person I know," he said. "You've survived things that would have broken most people. You built a career from nothing. You left a family that didn't value you and created your own life. You can handle a few questions from some asshole in a suit. What if they ask about my mom? About the money I wouldn't give her? Then you tell the truth. That you learn to protect yourself from people who took advantage of you. That's not a weakness. It's survival." Mira's hands fisted in his shirt. "I'm doing this for Ethan. You know that, right? I'm not trying to be a hero or prove anything. I just want him to stay with you because that's where he belongs." "I know. And if this all falls apart, if the judge rules against you anyway, I need you to know I tried. I really tried. It's not going to fall apart." But Adrian didn't know that. Nobody did. The whole thing could go either way, and the uncertainty was killing both of them. They went to bed early, neither sleeping, just holding each other in the dark. At some point, Mira started crying quietly. Adrian pretended not to notice, giving her the dignity of privacy even while wrapped in his arms. "I love you," she whispered around 3 a.m. "I love you too. Promise me something. Anything. If this goes bad, if you lose custody, don't blame yourself. And don't blame us." Her voice broke. "I couldn't handle it if you looked at me someday and saw the reason you lost your son. That's never going to happen. Promise me anyway." "I promise." But the fear she'd voiced sat heavy in his chest. What if she was right? What if years from now he looked back and wondered whether loving her had cost him everything that mattered? He pushed the thought away, held her tighter, tried to believe that doing the right thing would somehow be enough. Monday brought rain and a call from Adrian's lawyer with news that made his stomach drop. Sarah's team filed a last-minute motion. They want the judge to interview Ethan privately, get his perspective on where he wants to live. "No, absolutely not. He's 8 years old. You can't put that kind of pressure on him." "I agree. We're fighting it. But there's precedent for judges talking to children in custody cases, especially at Ethan's age. This is bullshit. Sarah's trying to manipulate him. Probably. But there's not much we can do except argue against it and hope the judge agrees." Adrian hung up and immediately called Sarah. "What the hell are you doing?" I'm letting Ethan have a voice in his own life. He's a child. He shouldn't have to choose between his parents. Then maybe you should have thought about that before starting an inappropriate relationship. Sarah's voice was cold. This could all be over if you just ended it with her. The offer still stands. I'm not ending anything. Then live with the consequences. She hung up. Adrian stood in his office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd conquered, and felt completely powerless. That evening he told Mira about the motion. She went pale. They're going to make Ethan testify? Talk to the judge, privately. It's different. Not by much. She sat down hard on his couch. He's going to have to choose. An 8-year-old boy is going to have to pick which parent he wants to live with. We don't know if the judge will allow it. But if she does, what then? Adrian had no answer. Ethan loved both his parents, loved the stability of splitting time between houses, even if it wasn't perfect. Forcing him to choose would hurt him no matter what he said. I should leave, Mira said suddenly. What? Not forever. Just until after the hearing. Give you and Ethan space. Let you focus on the case without worrying about me. I'm not worried about you. Yes, you are. You're worried about how it looks, about what Sarah's lawyers will say, about whether I'm making everything worse. She stood. And maybe I am. Maybe you'd have a better shot if I just disappeared for a while. Mira, don't. I'm not running away. I'm giving you room to fight for your son without me being a complication. She left before Adrian could argue. He let her go because part of him wondered if she was right, if everything would be simpler without her in the immediate picture. That night he couldn't sleep. Kept reaching for his phone to call her, putting it down. At 2 a.m. he finally texted, I need you here. She replied immediately, I'm coming. She showed up 20 minutes later in pajamas and a coat, hair messy, eyes red. Adrian opened the door and pulled her inside. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For making you feel like you need to hide, for not fighting harder to make this okay. You're fighting as hard as you can. It doesn't feel like enough. They stood in his foyer holding each other, and Adrian realized something. Win or lose, he'd already made his choice. Not between Mira and Ethan, he'd never choose between them, but between living safely or living honestly, between control and risk, between the life everyone expected him to have and the one he actually wanted. I'm testifying, Mira said against his chest. I'm going to tell them exactly who I am and why I'm with you. And if they don't like it, fuck them. Adrian laughed despite everything. That's my girl. Damn right. Tuesday was a blur of final preparations. Adrian's lawyer drilled him on likely questions, coached him on tone and body language, reminded him repeatedly not to let Sarah's team provoke him into saying something stupid. Stay calm. Stay factual. Don't get emotional even when they try to make you. The lawyer looked at Mira. Same for you. They're going to imply you're a gold digger. Don't defend yourself with anger. Just state the facts and let the judge draw her own conclusions. What if the facts aren't enough? Then we lose. But at least we lose with dignity. Not exactly inspiring, but honest. That night, Adrian took Ethan out for dinner, just the two of them. They went to the burger place his son loved, sat in a booth in the back, and Adrian tried to be present instead of catastrophizing about tomorrow. Dad? Yeah, buddy. Mom said I might have to talk to the judge. Adrian's burger turned to ash in his mouth. Did she tell you what about? About where I want to live. Ethan pushed fries around his plate. I don't want to pick. Why do I have to pick? You might not have to. The judge hasn't decided yet. But if I do? Adrian chose his words carefully. If you have to talk to the judge, just tell her the truth about how you feel. Don't worry about making anyone happy. Just be honest. What if the truth makes someone sad? Sometimes the truth does that, but it's still better than lying. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then, I want to stay with you. Is that bad? Adrian's chest went tight. No, buddy, that's not bad. But Mom will be sad. Your mom loves you. She'll understand. Except Sarah wouldn't understand. She'd be furious. But that wasn't Ethan's burden to carry. They finished dinner and went home. Adrian tucked his son in, read him 2 chapters from a book about dragons, and stood in the doorway watching him sleep long after he should have left. Whatever happened tomorrow, Ethan was the best thing he'd ever done. No judge could take that away. Mira called at midnight. "I can't stop thinking about what might happen," she said. "All the different ways this could go wrong." "Me neither." "What if we lose?" "Then we figure out next steps, appeal maybe, or adjust to whatever custody arrangement the judge orders." "And us? What about us? Do we survive this? If you only get Ethan every other weekend and Sarah makes it hell, do we make it through that?" Adrian thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I want to try." "That's not very reassuring." "It's honest." Mira laughed, shaky and wet. "I hate that you're honest." "No, you don't." "No, I don't." A pause. "I love you. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. You've changed my life, made me believe I'm worth more than I thought." "You are worth more." "I'm starting to believe it." They stayed on the phone until almost 2 a.m., talking about nothing and everything. When Adrian finally hung up, he felt marginally less terrified. He didn't sleep, just lay in bed watching the ceiling and running through scenarios until dawn broke gray and cold outside his windows. The hearing was at 9 a.m. Adrian, dressed in his best suit, the armor of success he'd built his empire in, checked his reflection and saw a man trying desperately to hold his life together. His lawyer met him at the courthouse steps. "Remember, calm, factual. Don't react to Sarah's provocations." "Got it. And if the judge asks about Mira, be honest but brief. You're in a committed relationship with someone who's been good for your son. That's all you need to say." "What if they ask how we met?" "Tell the truth. She was your tenant. The relationship developed after she moved out. Don't embellish. Don't minimize. Just facts." Mira arrived 15 minutes later. She'd worn a simple dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked nervous and beautiful and completely out of place in the courthouse hallway. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "No, you?" "No." She reached for his hand, squeezed once. "Let's do this." The courtroom was smaller than Adrian expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a bench where a judge in black robes would decide his future. Sarah was already there with Marcus and her lawyer, sitting on the opposite side like they were at a wedding. Adrian's lawyer had warned him not to make eye contact. He didn't listen. Looked right at Sarah and saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or regret. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold determination he'd come to know during their divorce. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. Sarah's lawyer went first, painting a picture of Adrian as a man whose judgment had been compromised by loneliness and poor decision-making. The timeline of Mira moving in, the financial disparity between them, the speed with which their relationship had developed, all presented as evidence of instability. "Mr. Vale may be a successful businessman," the lawyer concluded, "but his personal choices demonstrate a pattern of impulsivity that raises serious questions about his ability to provide a stable environment for his son." Adrian's lawyer countered with facts. Adrian's consistent involvement in Ethan's life, his financial stability, character witnesses who testified to his devotion as a father, the child psychologist who'd evaluated both homes and found Adrian's more emotionally supportive. Then came testimony. Sarah went first, crying on cue as she talked about missing her son, wanting more time with him, worrying about the influence of strangers in his life. She was good. Adrian had forgotten how good she was at performing emotion. Adrian testified next, walking through his daily routine with Ethan, his involvement in school activities, the life they'd built together. Sarah's lawyer cross-examined aggressively. "When did you meet Ms. Lawson?" "Last October." "And she moved into your apartment when?" "Late November." "Less than a month after meeting her, you invited a woman you barely knew to live in your home where your 8-year-old son spends half his time?" "She was in a difficult situation. I had an extra room. It was a temporary arrangement." "How temporary? She lived there for 3 months." "Until she found her own place?" "Yes." "And during those 3 months, were you romantically involved?" "No." "When did the romantic relationship begin?" "After she moved out, February." "How convenient." The lawyer's tone dripped skepticism. "So you maintained completely appropriate boundaries for 3 months while this young, financially struggling woman lived under your roof and then immediately began dating the moment she left?" "Yes." "Mr. Vale, do you really expect this court to believe that?" Adrian's lawyer objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The implication hung heavy, that Adrian had been involved with Mira the whole time, that everything they'd said was a carefully constructed lie. Then it was Mira's turn. She walked to the witness stand looking small and terrified, took the oath with a shaking voice. Sarah's lawyer didn't waste time. "Ms. Lawson, what was your financial situation when you met Mr. Vale?" "I was struggling. Freelance work wasn't consistent." "Were you behind on rent?" "Yes." "Facing eviction?" "My brother was selling the apartment I was staying in. I needed to find a new place." "So you were desperate?" "I was in a difficult situation." "And then you met a billionaire who offered you a room in his luxury apartment. That must have seemed very fortunate. It was kind of him to help." "Kind? Or convenient for you?" Mira's jaw tightened. "I paid rent. $400 a month. $400 for a room in the Meridian, one of the most expensive buildings in the city. The market rate for apartments there is what, 4,000? 5,000? It was what we agreed on. Because Mr. Vale is wealthy and you needed help, correct?" "Because I insisted on paying something and that's what he allowed." "Allowed." The lawyer seized on the word. "Interesting choice. He allowed you to pay a fraction of market rate. He allowed you to live in his home. He allowed you into his life and his son's life. It sounds like Mr. Vale has been very generous with his allowances." Adrian watched Mira's hands fist in her lap, saw her fighting to stay calm. "Adrian helped me when I needed it," she said slowly. "That doesn't make me a gold digger. It makes him a decent person. And your relationship with him, which began so conveniently after you moved out, that's based on genuine feeling, not gratitude or financial security?" "I love him." Mira's voice was steady now. "I loved him before I moved in, and I love him now. And yes, he has money, and I don't, but that's not why I'm with him. I'm with him because he sees me as a whole person, because he makes me want to be better, because his son is amazing and deserves someone in his life who gives a damn." "That's a lovely speech, Miss Lawson. But the fact remains that you went from financially desperate to dating a billionaire in the span of a few months. You can understand why that might look opportunistic. I can understand why someone cynical would see it that way, but understanding it doesn't make it true." The lawyer tried a few more angles, but Mira held firm. When she finally stepped down, Adrian could see she was shaking. The morning stretched into afternoon. More witnesses. More testimony. The judge asked questions, made notes, revealed nothing. Finally, around 3 p.m., she called a recess. "I'd like to speak with Ethan Vale in my chambers. Alone." Adrian's stomach dropped. His lawyer had filed a motion against this, argued it was traumatic for the child. The judge had apparently disagreed. "Your Honor," Adrian's lawyer stood, "we'd respectfully request." "Request noted and denied. The child is 8 years old enough to have thoughts about his living situation. I'd like to hear them directly." Ethan was brought in 20 minutes later, looking tiny in the big courtroom. He saw Adrian and Mira, and his face brightened before he remembered where he was and why. The judge spoke to him gently, then led him back to her chambers. The door closed. Adrian sat frozen while his son disappeared behind closed doors to answer questions no 8-year-old should have to answer. "What's he gonna say?" Mira whispered. "I don't know." "What if he says he wants to live with Sarah?" "Then that's what he says." But the thought made Adrian feel physically sick, not because Ethan choosing Sarah would mean losing, though it would, but because his son would carry the guilt of that choice for the rest of his life. They waited and waited. 30 minutes passed. 45. Finally, the door opened. Ethan came out first, eyes red like he'd been crying. He ran straight to Adrian. "Dad, it's okay, buddy. Whatever you said, it's okay." Ethan buried his face in Adrian's chest. The judge returned to the bench, expression unreadable. "I've heard enough testimony," she said. "I'll issue my ruling by the end of the week. Court is adjourned." That was it. No dramatic pronouncement, no immediate decision, just more waiting. Adrian walked out of the courthouse with Ethan clinging to his hand and Mira pale beside him. Sarah and Marcus left through a different exit. "I told her I want to stay with you," Ethan said in the car. "Is that okay?" Adrian's throat went tight. "Yeah, buddy, that's okay. She asked if Mira was nice to me. I said yes. I said she teaches me stuff and doesn't treat me like a baby. You did great. I don't want to live with Marcus, Dad. He's fine, but he's not you. I know. Ethan fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from emotion. Adrian drove while Mira sat quiet in the passenger seat. What do you think? She asked finally. I think we did everything we could. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They took Ethan home, got him dinner, let him watch more TV than he should have because all three of them needed the numbing comfort of screens and noise. When Adrian finally got him to bed, he found Mira standing at the living room windows. I keep replaying it, she said. Every question I answered, wondering if I said the wrong thing, if I made it worse. You didn't? You don't know that. You were honest. That's all anyone can ask. Mira turned to face him. What if we lose? Then we lose. Just like that? You're okay with it? I'm not okay with it, but I'm also not going to spend the next 3 days torturing myself over something I can't control. Adrian crossed to her, pulled her close. We fought. We told the truth. Now we wait. I hate waiting. Me too. She pressed her face against his chest. Promise me something. What? If the ruling goes against you, if you only get limited custody, don't shut me out. Don't decide this is too hard and walk away. I'm not walking away. Promise me anyway. I promise. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other against the uncertainty of the future. The next 3 days were agony. Adrian tried to work, failed, ended up staring at his computer screen without processing anything. Mira threw herself into a design project that was due the following week. Ethan went to school, came home, asked repeatedly if the judge had decided yet. Not yet, buddy. When? Soon. Friday afternoon, Adrian's phone rang. His lawyer. The ruling's in. I'm reading it now. Adrian's hand went numb around the phone. And? A pause that lasted forever. You won. She ruled in your favor. Current custody arrangement stands. Adrian sat down hard, legs giving out. What? The judge found Sarah's claims unsubstantiated, said your relationship with Ms. Lawson, while unconventional in its origins, showed no evidence of negatively impacting Ethan. She noted his clear preference to maintain the current arrangement and saw no compelling reason to change it. We won. You won. Adrian hung up, called Mira immediately. It's over. We won. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Are you serious? Judge ruled in our favor. Custody stays the same. Oh my God, Adrian, I know. They stayed on the phone, both crying, neither saying much of substance. When Adrian finally hung up, he sat in his office and let the relief wash over him. They'd won. Not because they'd been perfect, not because they'd avoided mistakes, but because despite everything messy and complicated about their relationship, the truth had been enough. That evening, Adrian picked up Ethan from Sarah's place. His ex-wife answered the door, looking defeated. I'm appealing, she said. No, you're not. Adrian kept his voice level. Because if you do, I'll countersue for full custody based on the fact that you told our 8-year-old about the proceedings and put him through unnecessary stress. My lawyer already has the documentation. Sarah's jaw tightened. You wouldn't. Try me. She handed Ethan over without another word. Adrian drove home with his son chattering about his day, oblivious to what had just been decided about his future. Mira was waiting at the apartment when they got there. Ethan ran to her immediately. Did you hear? I get to stay here. I heard. I'm so glad. Me too. Can we celebrate with pizza? They ordered pizza, watched a movie, did normal family things while Adrian tried to process the fact that he'd been given a second chance. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Mira found Adrian on the balcony. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About? How close we came to losing everything. He pulled her close. And how lucky I am that we didn't. She kissed him, soft and gentle. We did it. We did. They stood together under the city lights, and for the first time in months, Adrian felt something like peace. But peace, he was learning, was always temporary. And the hardest test was still ahead. The hardest test came 3 weeks after the custody ruling, on a night when everything should have been perfect. Adrian had just closed a deal that would expand Vail Industries into 3 new markets. Ethan had aced a math test he'd been worried about for weeks. Mira's design firm had offered her a permanent position with benefits, and a salary that finally meant stability. They'd planned to celebrate. Dinner at that Italian place Ethan loved, then ice cream, maybe a movie. Normal things. Happy things. But Mira showed up at Adrian's apartment at 6 p.m. looking wrecked, and he knew immediately something had broken. What happened? She dropped her bag, didn't take off her coat. My mom called. She's in the hospital, collapsed at her boyfriend's place. They think it's her heart. Jesus, is she okay? I don't know, they're running tests. Mira's hands were shaking. Her boyfriend called me because he didn't know what else to do. Said she's been having chest pains for weeks, but wouldn't see a doctor. Do you need to go there? She's 2 hours away, and Mira stopped, wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know if I should. Every time she's needed me, it's been manipulation. What if this is just another crisis she's manufacturing for attention? What if it's not? She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Then I go and she's actually sick, and I'll feel obligated to help and she'll drain me dry like she always does. Or I don't go and she actually dies and I spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm as selfish as she always said I was. Adrian crossed the room, took her cold hands in his. What do you want to do? I want to not care. I want to be the kind of person who can just cut toxic people out and never look back. Her voice cracked. But I'm not. I keep hoping she'll change, that one day she'll actually need me instead of what I can give her. Then go. I'll drive you. What about dinner, Ethan's celebration? We'll celebrate tomorrow. This is more important. Mira looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You'd really do that? Drop everything to drive me 2 hours to see my mother who's probably faking this whole thing. In a heartbeat. She started crying. Not the quiet tears she usually tried to hide, but real, broken sobs. Adrian held her while she fell apart, and when Ethan emerged from his room asking what was wrong, Adrian explained gently that they needed to help Mira with a family emergency. Can I come? Ethan asked. Not this time, buddy, but I need you to do me a favor. Can you stay with Jenny tonight? I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Ethan looked at Mira, then back at Adrian. Is Mira's mom going to be okay? We don't know yet. Tell her I hope she feels better. The simple kindness of it made Mira cry harder. She knelt down, hugged Ethan tight. Thank you, sweetheart. You're the best. They dropped Ethan with Jenny, then drove north into the gathering dark. Mira was quiet for the first hour, staring out the window at passing lights. Finally, she spoke. I haven't seen her in almost 2 years. Not since she called asking for money and I said no, and she told me I was dead to her. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. She meant it. She's always meant everything she said to me. I'm the disappointment, the one who didn't turn out right. David got her ambition, her charm. I got her damage without any of the good parts. That's not true. Isn't it? I'm 30 years old and I'm just starting to get my life together. Meanwhile, my brother's successful, engaged, living the life she wanted for both of us. Adrian glanced over. You're successful too. You built a career from nothing. You survived a family that didn't support you. You learned to stand on your own. I lived in your apartment because I was too broke to afford my own place. For 3 months, while you rebuilt. That's not failure, Mira. That's resourcefulness. She was quiet again. Then, what if seeing her sets me back? What if I walk into that hospital and all the progress I've made just disappears? Then I'll be there to remind you who you are. The hospital was small, understaffed, the fluorescent lights making everyone look half dead. Mira's mother was in the ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. She looked older than Adrian expected, 50-something going on 70, worn down by choices that had caught up with her. Her boyfriend was in the waiting room, a tired-looking man in his 60s who seemed relieved to see Mira. They're saying it's a heart attack, moderate damage. She'll need surgery, but they think she'll make it. Can I see her? She's asleep right now, sedated. But yeah, you can go in. Mira stood at the doorway of her mother's room for a long time before entering. Adrian stayed in the hall, giving her space. Through the window, he could see Mira approach the bed slowly, like she was approaching something dangerous. She stood there for maybe 10 minutes, just looking at the woman who'd given birth to her, and then spent 30 years making her feel like it wasn't enough. When Mira finally came back out, her face was dry, but her eyes were red. She looks so small, she said. I always thought of her as this huge presence in my life. but she's just a small, sick woman who made a lot of bad choices. They sat in the waiting room while doctors came and went with updates. The surgery was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Prognosis was decent if she followed post-op protocols. Big if, the boyfriend said. Your mom's not great at following rules. Around midnight, a nurse said Mira's mother was awake if she wanted to talk. Mira looked at Adrian. You want me to come with you? No, this is something I need to do alone. She went in. Adrian waited, watching through the window as mother and daughter had a conversation he couldn't hear. Mira's body language was tense. Her mother's was defensive even from a hospital bed. Whatever was being said, it wasn't easy. 20 minutes later, Mira came out looking exhausted. Let's go. They drove to a hotel near the hospital, checked into a room with 2 beds because it was all that was available. Mira sat on one bed, still in her coat, staring at nothing. She asked for money, she said finally. Lying in a hospital bed after a heart attack, and the first thing she does is ask if I can help pay for the surgery her insurance won't cover. What did you say? I said I'd think about it, which is more than she deserves. Mira laughed bitterly. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't ask about my life, just went straight to what she needed from me. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm used to it. She finally took off her coat, let it drop to the floor. She did say one thing that hit me, though. Said she knows she wasn't a good mother, that she knows she failed me and David, but she doesn't know how to be different. That's not an excuse. I know, but it's something. An acknowledgement, at least. Mira looked at him. I'm going to help her. Pay for part of the surgery. Not because she deserves it, but because I need to know I'm not like her, that I can show up for people even when it's hard. You're nothing like her. I want to believe that. Then believe it. They went to bed in separate beds, the space between them feeling both necessary and wrong. Adrian lay awake listening to Mira breathe and thinking about families, about damage that gets passed down, about choosing to be better than the people who raised you. The next morning, they went back to the hospital. Mira's mother went into surgery. Mira sat in the waiting room holding Adrian's hand, not talking, just existing in the liminal space between before and after. The surgery took 4 hours. When the doctor finally came out, he said it had gone well. Recovery would be long, but she should make it. Mira nodded, thanked him, then went outside and threw up in a trash can. Adrian held her hair back, rubbed her shoulders while she heaved up fear and relief and 30 years of complicated feelings about the woman in that hospital bed. I don't know why I care, she said, when she could finally speak. After everything she's done, I shouldn't care if she lives or dies. You care because you're human. That's not a weakness. It feels like one. They drove back to the city that afternoon. Mira slept most of the way, head against the window, looking younger and more vulnerable than Adrian had ever seen her. When they got back to his apartment, Ethan was waiting with Jenny. Is Mira's mom okay? He asked immediately. She will be, Mira said, managing a smile. Thank you for asking. I made her a card. Ethan produced a piece of construction paper with a crayon drawing of flowers and the words "Get well soon" in unsteady letters. In case you want to send it to her. Mira took the card with shaking hands, looked at this 8-year-old boy who barely knew her mother but had thought to make something kind anyway. She knelt down, pulled Ethan into a hug. You're amazing, you know that? I know, Ethan said, completely serious. Dad tells me all the time. That night, after Ethan was in bed, Adrian found Mira on the balcony. She'd been there for an hour, just standing in the cold, staring at the city. You okay? I don't know what I am. She didn't look at him. Seeing her like that, so weak and small, it made me realize something. What? I've spent my whole life waiting for her to love me the way I needed to be loved. Waiting for her to choose me over her boyfriends, her problems, herself. And she's never going to do that. She's fundamentally incapable of it. Mira, but here's the thing. She finally turned to face him. I don't need her to anymore. I have you. I have Ethan. I have a life I'm building that has nothing to do with her, and that's enough. Adrian pulled her close. More than enough. I'm going to help her with the medical bills, set up a payment plan or something, but after that, I'm done. No more rescue missions. No more waiting for her to become someone she's not. That's fair. Is it? Mira looked up at him. Because it feels cruel. She's my mother. She's sick. And I'm basically saying I'll help this once, and then I'm out. You're setting boundaries. That's not cruel. That's survival. She leaned her head against his chest. How did you get so wise about fucked up families? Practice. They stood together in the cold, and Adrian thought about damage and healing, about choosing who you let into your life and who you keep at arm's length, about the fact that sometimes love means knowing when to walk away. The next few weeks settled into a new normal. Mira's mother recovered slowly, complaining about the hospital food and the physical therapy and everything else, but she recovered. Mira sent money for the bills she'd promised to cover, then stopped responding to her mother's calls asking for more. It's harder than I thought, she admitted to Adrian one evening. Every time my phone rings, I wonder if it's her, if she's going to guilt me into something else. You could block her number. I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm getting there. Work was good. Ethan was thriving. Adrian and Mira fell into an easy rhythm of dinners together, weekends as a makeshift family, conversations that went deeper than either of them had thought possible. It should have been perfect. But one night in late June, Mira came over looking serious in a way that made Adrian's stomach clench. We need to talk. Those 4 words, never good. They sat on the couch, careful distance between them. Mira twisted her hands in her lap. I got offered a job in New York, creative director position at a major firm. Salary is twice what I'm making now. It's everything I've worked toward. Adrian felt the bottom drop out of his world. When did this happen? They reached out last week. I had a phone interview, then they flew me out yesterday for meetings. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it would go anywhere. But it did. Yeah, they want me to start in August. Silence. Adrian tried to process this, tried to find words that weren't selfish or desperate. What do you want to do? He finally asked. I don't know. That's why we need to talk. She looked at him. A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. This is exactly the kind of opportunity I dreamed about. But now there's you and Ethan and this life we've built. You should take it. Mira blinked. What? It's your dream job. In New York. You should take it. Just like that? You're not going to ask me to stay? Would you? If I asked? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe, but I'd resent it eventually. I'd wonder what I gave up. Exactly, so take the job. Adrian, I'm serious. This is huge for you. You've worked your ass off to get to this point. I'm not going to be the reason you don't grab it. Mira started crying. I don't want to leave you. I don't want you to leave either, but I want you to be happy more than I want you to stay. That's the most depressing thing you've ever said. It's the truth. She moved closer, grabbed his hands. What if I asked you to come with me? You could run Vail Industries from anywhere. Ethan could visit on breaks and summers. I can't take Ethan away from his mother. Not after everything we just went through with custody. Then we do long distance. New York is 3 hours away. We can make it work. Adrian wanted to believe that, but he'd seen what distance did to relationships, the slow erosion of intimacy, the missed moments, the growing apart that happened when you stopped sharing daily life. We can try, he said, because saying no felt impossible. But they both knew trying might not be enough. The next month was a countdown to something neither of them wanted. Mira accepted the job, started making plans to move. Found an apartment in Brooklyn that cost more than her current place, but was closer to her new office. They spent every available moment together, trying to fit a lifetime of memories into weeks. Ethan was confused about why Mira was leaving, angry at the change, sullen in ways he'd never been before. You said she was staying, he accused Adrian one night. Plans change, buddy. That's a stupid reason. I know. Why can't she just work here? Because sometimes the best opportunities are somewhere else. I hate it. Me too. The night before Mira left, they had dinner at Adrian's apartment. Just the 3 of them, eating pasta Mira had made and pretending everything was fine. Ethan picked at his food, not talking. Mira kept trying to start conversations that died quickly. Finally, Ethan pushed back from the table. May I be excused? Yeah, buddy. He left without another word. Mira watched him go, tears threatening. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He's sad. There's a difference. I'm sad too. I'm making this choice and I'm still devastated by it. After Ethan was in bed, Adrian and Mira sat together on the couch one last time. Tomorrow she'd drive to New York, start her new job on Monday. Begin a life that didn't include daily proximity to him. Promise me something, Mira said. Anything. Don't let this be the end. Even if long distance gets hard, even if we fight or drift apart, don't just give up without telling me. I promise. And take care of Ethan. Tell him I didn't leave because of him, that I love him. He knows. Make sure he knows. They went to bed together one last time, holding each other in the dark, trying to memorize the feel of skin on skin, breath on breath, the weight of another body beside you. In the morning, Mira packed her car while Adrian made coffee. Neither of them drank. Ethan stayed in his room, refusing to say goodbye. Adrian didn't force him. He'll come around, Adrian said when Mira asked about it. What if he doesn't? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Mira looked at the apartment she'd lived in, the space she'd occupied in their lives. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when no one else did. For making me believe I was worth more. You are worth more. I'm starting to know that. She kissed him, long and desperate and final. Then she got in her car and drove away. Adrian stood on the street watching until her car disappeared around a corner. Then he went inside to his empty apartment and his quiet son and the life that had just gotten smaller. The first month was terrible. They talked every day, but the conversations felt strained, both of them trying too hard. Mira was overwhelmed with her new job, working 16-hour days to prove herself. Adrian was buried in work and single parenting, exhausted in ways he hadn't been before. The second month was worse. They talked less. Missed calls became routine. Text messages replaced real conversations. By month 3, Adrian could feel them slipping away from each other. We should talk, Mira said during one of their increasingly rare video calls. Adrian's stomach clenched. About what? About whether this is working. Is it working for you? Honestly? No. I miss you constantly, but I also love my job. I'm doing work I'm proud of, making connections, building something real, and I feel guilty about being happy when we're apart. You shouldn't feel guilty about being happy. Then why do I? Adrian looked at her face on his screen, pixelated and distant. Because you think happiness means choosing, him or the job, New York or here, but it doesn't have to be binary. Doesn't it, though? We've been trying to make this work for 3 months and we're both miserable. She wasn't wrong, but hearing it said out loud hurt more than Adrian expected. So, what do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. What do you want? I want you to be happy, even if that means letting you go. Mira's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. You can't just be noble about this. What do you want me to say? That I'm jealous of your job? That I resent you for leaving? I am, and I do, but saying it won't change anything. At least it would be honest. Fine. Honest. Adrian leaned closer to the camera. I'm furious that you left. I'm angry that you chose a job over us. I hate that Ethan asks about you every day and I have to tell him you're busy. I hate that I go to bed alone and wake up alone and spend my days wondering if you're thinking about me or if you're too absorbed in your new perfect life to care. Mira was crying now. I think about you constantly. Every day. Every decision I make, I wonder what you'd think. I see something funny and reach for my phone to text you before remembering we barely talk anymore. So what do we do? I don't know. They stared at each other through screens, separated by 3 hours and choices neither could take back. Maybe we need a break, Mira said finally. Real space to figure out what we actually want instead of just trying to hold on to something that's not working. A break? Or a breakup? I don't know. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. She wiped her eyes. A break. A real one, no calls, no texts, just time to think. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to say that breaks were just slow-motion breakups, but he was tired of fighting for something that felt like it was already gone. Okay, he said. How long? I don't know. A month? 2? Okay. They said goodbye. Awkward and painful and nothing like the goodbyes before. Then the screen went dark and Adrian was alone. Ethan took the news badly. So she's just gone? For real this time? We're taking some time apart. That's adult code for breaking up. It's not. Adrian stopped. Yeah, maybe it is. I told you to fight for her. I did fight for her. Sometimes fighting means knowing when to let go. That's stupid. Yeah, it kind of is. The weeks crawled past. Adrian threw himself into work and parenting, tried not to check Mira's social media, failed, hated himself for it. Saw pictures of her at gallery openings, design conferences, looking happy and successful, and like she'd never needed him at all. He went on a date. One of those setup things where a friend's wife insisted he needed to get back out there. The woman was nice, successful, age-appropriate. They had nothing to talk about. "You're still in love with someone else," she said over dessert. "That obvious?" Painfully. He didn't go on another date. 2 months after the break started, Adrian got a letter. Not an email or a text, but an actual letter, mailed in an envelope with Mira's handwriting on it. He stared at it for an hour before opening it. Inside was 3 pages of her careful script. He read it standing in his kitchen, coffee going cold on the counter. She wrote about New York, about the job that was everything she'd hoped and somehow still not enough. About therapy she'd started, working through her family stuff and patterns of seeking validation from people who couldn't give it. About realizing that when she'd reached for him that last night before everything fell apart, she hadn't been reaching for love. She'd been reaching for escape from a life that felt too small and too hard. "I was using you," she wrote, "not for money or status or any of the things Sarah accused me of, but for relief. You made me feel safe and valued and like I mattered, and I confused that feeling with love. Or maybe it was love, but the wrong kind. The desperate kind that's more about what you need than who the person actually is." She wrote about the months in New York, about building a life that was actually hers, about learning to sit with loneliness instead of running from it, about discovering that she could be okay on her own, that she didn't need rescue or validation or someone else to make her feel complete. "Your refusal that night," she wrote, "the night I came to you desperate and broken and asking for something you knew I'd regret, that was the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me. You saw what I couldn't see, that I wasn't ready, that what I needed wasn't sex or romance or proof that someone wanted me. What I needed was to learn how to want myself." Adrian read the letter 3 times. Then he sat down and wrote back. He told her about the custody battle, about learning that control was an illusion, and sometimes the only thing you could do was show up honestly and hope it was enough. About Ethan growing up too fast, asking questions about relationships and choices that Adrian didn't have good answers for. About realizing that he'd been doing the same thing she had, using their relationship as proof he could still feel something after Sarah had left him hollow. "I loved you," he wrote. "I still love you. But you were right to leave. We were both holding on to each other because we were scared of being alone, not because we were actually ready to build something sustainable. And sustainable matters, especially when there's a kid involved." He mailed the letter without overthinking it. 2 weeks later, another letter came, then another. They wrote back and forth through the fall, long, honest letters that said things they'd never managed to say face to face. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people who'd meant something to each other, trying to figure out what that something was. Mira wrote about dating someone briefly, a designer at her firm who was smart and kind and ultimately not right. About how she'd realized she was comparing everyone to Adrian, and that wasn't fair to anyone. Adrian wrote about not dating, about focusing on Ethan and work and learning to be okay with quiet, about how his apartment still felt empty, but in a different way now. Not lonely, just spacious. 6 months after the break started, Mira called. "Hey," she said when he answered. "Hey yourself. I'm coming home for Thanksgiving, visiting David in Portland. I was thinking maybe I could stop by. See you and Ethan, if that's okay." Adrian's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Yeah, that would be good. Just as friends, no pressure." "Friends, got it," he told Ethan that night. His son, now 9 and somehow even more perceptive, looked at him seriously. "Are you getting back together?" "I don't know, buddy. Maybe not. But we can still be friends." "That's sad. Sometimes that's how things work out." "Do you still love her?" Adrian thought about lying, decided against it. "Yeah, I do." "Then you should tell her. It's not that simple." Adults always say that when they're being cowards. Brutal, but not wrong. Mira arrived the week of Thanksgiving, driving up from Portland where she'd spent a few days with David. She looked different, hair longer, confidence in the way she carried herself that hadn't been there before. "You look good," Adrian said when he opened the door. "You too." Awkward hug. Then Ethan was there, launching himself at Mira with the enthusiasm of a kid who didn't care about adult complications. "You're back." Just visiting, but yeah, I'm back. They ordered Chinese food, sat around Adrian's kitchen island like old times, except everything was different. Mira told stories about New York, about projects she'd worked on and people she'd met. Ethan told her about school, about the kid he was maybe friends with now, about how his dad had finally learned to cook something other than pasta. It's true, Adrian admitted. I can make chicken now, only one way, but still. That's progress. After Ethan went to bed, Adrian and Mira sat on the balcony with wine, looking at the city lights. I miss this, Mira said. This view, this quiet. You could come back. Could I? My life is in New York now. My job, my apartment, the connections I've built. I know. But I think about it sometimes. What it would be like to come back, to see if we could do it right this time. Adrian looked at her. What would right look like? I don't know. Maybe it looks like me keeping my job in New York and you visiting sometimes. Maybe it looks like you opening an office there and splitting time. Maybe it looks like us realizing we're better as friends than we ever were as a couple. That last one would suck, she laughed. Yeah, it would. I don't want to do long distance again, Adrian said. It nearly killed us last time. I don't either, but I'm also not ready to give up my career. I worked too hard to get here. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Nothing. I'm just glad you're here. They sat in comfortable silence, and Adrian realized something. The desperate need to hold on to her was gone. He still loved her, probably always would, but he didn't need her the way he had before, and that was actually better. I should probably go, Mira said eventually. I'm staying at a hotel near the airport, early flight tomorrow. You could stay here, guest room's empty. She hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. Probably not, but the offer stands. She left, kissed his cheek at the door, held on a little longer than necessary. Thank you for tonight, for being okay with this weird in-between thing we're doing. Always. After she left, Adrian poured another glass of wine he didn't really want and thought about choices, about paths taken and not taken, about the fact that sometimes love wasn't enough, and that was okay too. Years passed. Mira stayed in New York, eventually made creative director, and then started her own firm. Adrian expanded Vale Industries, traveled more, learned to be present with Ethan instead of just physically there. They wrote letters less frequently but stayed in touch. Birthday texts, holiday calls, the occasional visit when Mira came to the city for business. It was friendly, easy, nothing like the desperate intensity of those early months. Ethan graduated high school, got accepted to college in Boston. Sarah had remarried, moved to California, saw her son maybe twice a year. The custody battle felt like something from another lifetime. When Ethan left for college, Adrian felt the empty nest acutely. Came home to an apartment that was too quiet, too clean, too much space for one person. He was sitting on his balcony one evening in late August when his phone rang. Mira's name on the screen still made his heart jump a little. Hey, he answered. Hey yourself. How are you holding up? Ethan's been gone 4 days and I've already rearranged the living room twice. So, not great. She laughed. Want some company? I'm in town for a conference. Could stop by. Yeah, I'd like that. She showed up an hour later and Adrian realized it had been almost 2 years since he'd seen her in person. She looked good. Older, yes, but in a way that suited her. Comfortable in her skin in a way she never had been before. Your hair's shorter, he said. Yours is grayer. Brutal, but fair. They ordered dinner, talked about Ethan and his college plans, about Mira's firm, and Adrian's latest acquisition. Normal stuff, friend stuff. Then Mira set down her wine glass. I need to tell you something. Adrian's stomach clenched reflexively. Okay. I'm thinking about moving back, to the city. What? Why? My firm's stable enough that I can run it remotely. And honestly, I'm tired of New York. The pace, the cost, the constant hustle. I want something quieter. So you're coming back? Maybe, if that's okay with you. Why would you need my permission? Because you're here, and I don't want to make things weird by showing up in your city again. Adrian looked at her. This woman who'd changed his life, who he'd loved and lost and somehow kept loving in a different way. It's not weird, he said. It would actually be nice, having you close again. As friends. Yeah, as friends. They looked at each other across the table, and something passed between them that felt like understanding. They'd tried the relationship thing. It hadn't worked, not the way either of them needed it to. But the friendship, the genuine care and respect that had survived everything. I missed you, Mira said quietly. Missed you too. She moved back 3 months later, found a loft in the arts district, close enough to visit but far enough to maintain her own life. They fell into an easy rhythm of dinners once a week, texts about random things, the occasional weekend coffee. It wasn't romance. It was better than that. It was real. One evening, maybe 6 months after she'd moved back, they were having dinner at Adrian's apartment when Ethan video called. Hey, Dad. Oh, hey, Mira. Hey, yourself. How's Boston? Cold. Listen, I need to ask you guys something. Ethan looked serious, the way he did when he was working up courage. I'm bringing someone home for Thanksgiving. A girl, Emma. We've been dating for a few months. That's great, buddy, Adrian said. Yeah, but I wanted to ask if it's cool if Mira's there too. Kind of already told Emma about her, about how she's like, I don't know, family but not? And Emma wants to meet her. Adrian glanced at Mira, who looked touched and a little tearful. Of course I'll be there, she said. I wouldn't miss it. After they hung up, Mira wiped her eyes. He called me family. You are family, just a weird configuration of it. The best kind of weird. Thanksgiving came. Emma was lovely, smart, kind, clearly good for Ethan. They all had dinner together, this patchwork family that didn't look like anything traditional but somehow worked anyway. Watching Ethan with Emma, seeing the way they looked at each other with that mix of excitement and terror that comes with new love, Adrian felt something settle in his chest. Later that night, after Ethan and Emma had gone to their hotel, and it was just Adrian and Mira cleaning up, he said what he'd been thinking for months. I'm glad it happened, all of it, even the parts that hurt. Mira looked up from loading the dishwasher. Yeah? Yeah, because it taught me things I needed to learn, about control and letting go, about the difference between needing someone and choosing them, about the fact that love doesn't always look like what you expect. That's very philosophical for someone who just ate half a pie. I'm a philosopher now, comes with age. She laughed, then came to stand beside him at the window overlooking the city. I'm glad too, for all the same reasons and a few more. Like what? Like learning that I could be on my own and be okay. Like finding out that asking for help doesn't make you weak. Like discovering that sometimes the greatest act of care is choosing not to take what's offered. Adrian looked at her. You remember the night you came to my door, after your family stuff, when you were desperate and asked for... I remember. She met his eyes. You said no. And I hated you for it at the time. But you were right. I wasn't reaching for you. I was reaching for escape. I knew. And I couldn't let you use me as an escape when what you actually needed was to learn how to stand on your own. That restraint, Mira said softly. That decision to protect me even when I didn't want protection. That changed everything for me. It was the first time someone chose my long-term well-being over their own immediate want. It nearly killed me to do it. I know, but it was the right thing, for both of us. They stood together at the window, two people who'd traveled impossible roads to get to this moment of peace. Not together the way they'd once imagined, but not apart either. Just present, just honest, just enough. You know what the weird thing is, Adrian said after a while? What? I think we were always going to end up here. Friends, family, whatever this is. I think the romance was just the path we had to take to get to the real relationship. That's either really profound or really sad. Can't it be both? Mira smiled. Yeah, it can be both. Outside, the city glittered under a cold November sky. Somewhere out there, people were falling in love and breaking hearts and making choices they'd spend years understanding. Adrian had done all that, had survived it, had come out the other side with scars and wisdom, and a woman who'd seen him at his worst and somehow still chose to show up. Not as a lover, as something better, as someone who stayed. Thank you, Mira said suddenly. For what? For seeing me. For refusing me when I needed refusing. For loving me enough to let me go and then welcoming me back when I was ready to come home. You don't have to thank me for that. I know, but I'm going to anyway. She kissed his cheek, gentle and final, and full of everything they'd been to each other. Then she grabbed her coat. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. Same time next week? Wouldn't miss it. She left, and Adrian stood at his window watching the city breathe, thinking about dignity and restraint, and the fact that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when not to love someone the way they're asking. Years later, when people asked about his biggest regret, Adrian always said he didn't have one, because regret implied he'd made the wrong choice. And every choice, the rescue, the relationship, the refusal, the release, had been exactly right for the moment it was made. He'd saved her by not saving her. She'd freed him by leaving. And in the end, they'd both gotten something better than what they'd thought they wanted. They'd gotten truth and dignity and the understanding that sometimes, just sometimes, walking away is the kindest thing two people can do for each other. Not because love wasn't real, but because it was real enough to recognize when it needed to change form. From desperation to choice, from need to want, from clinging to releasing, from romance to something that lasted longer. Respect, understanding, family. The kind of love that doesn't ask for everything because it knows that everything is too much to ask. The kind that says, I see you, I care about you, and I'll choose your happiness over my own comfort every single time. That's the love that survives. And in the end, survival was what mattered most.